Chapter 126, Increase the difficulty. Chapter 126, Increase the difficulty. In the sword tomb, Jian Wushuang was standing beside the rubble. While looking at the rubble formed by the sword tomb guard, his eyebrows slightly crumpled. What the hell was that rock giant I just saw? Is it a test in the sword tomb? Jian Wushuang muttered. But, it's too weak if it is a test. The motion is quite big, and the strength is too weak. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said. If the Absolute Beauty heard this, she would certainly be embarrassed. The sword tomb guard was personally arranged by her, and she was pretty confident that Jian Wushuang would suffer miserably. Not only that, she thought he would have trouble just surviving. However, what was Jian Wushuang's comment about it? Too weak. Jian Wushuang did not know that this sword tomb guard was arranged for him according to his realm. They thought he just stepped into the initial gold core realm, so they arranged a weak sword tomb guard. But next time, they would arrange for a stronger one which would not be so easy to deal with. The sword tomb guard that suddenly appeared had astonished Jian Wushuang, but he did not care about it too much. He spent the following time there alone, quietly comprehending those sword scars. A month elapsed in a flash. Wom. The whole sword tomb shook violently again. With the previous experience in mind, Jian Wushuang was calm this time. Very soon, a huge sword tomb guard appeared in front of him. It has only been a month since the last time the sword tomb shook. That must mean a rock giant will appear in the sword tomb every month. Jian Wushuang muttered. How much stronger is this one compared to the last one, he muttered. If one rock giant appears every month, then their strengths would surely increase. It would be pointless if their strength keeps same, Jian Wushuang thought. Shortly after that, Jian Wushuang started fighting with this rock giant. A sword shadow directly flew toward the rock giant. However, the rock giant fiercely raised his hand and slammed it toward the air, instantly splitting the air. Jian Wushuang was pushed back by this sudden burst of strength. Shit! There was a slight change on Jian Wushuang's face. As soon as the rock giant displayed his first movement, Jian Wushuang immediately realized that this rock giant was much stronger than the one that he easily defeated last month. This one had a much higher level of power. The one that appeared last month could easily be destroyed with just a single wave of Jian Wushuang's sword. But this one actually knocked Jian Wushuang backward. Interesting. Jian Wushuang said. He smiled, and in the following moment, he released his full power and threw himself into the fight with the rock giant. The atmosphere was violent as Jian Wushuang thoroughly displayed his swordsmanship. In the void nearby, the Absolute Beauty and a strong man were watching calmly. I don't believe he will defeat this sword tomb guard as easily as the one I arranged before, the Absolute Beauty said in a cold voice. But my lady, it's obvious that this one is not Jian Wushuang's opponent either, the strong man said in a deep voice. The Absolute Beauty watched with a stern expression. She could also tell that even though Jian Wushuang did not instantly defeat the rock giant, he was obviously more powerful. His comprehension of sword essence has improved a lot, the Absolute Beauty said and sighed. 2 months ago, when Jian Wushuang was meditating on the sword scars in the sword tomb, she could tell his level in sword essence. Now, 2 months passed, and his comprehension of the sword essences had obviously reached a whole new level. In fact, only Jian Wushuang knew that his comprehension in sword essence had not just improved a little, it had improved significantly. In the past 2 months, Jian Wushuang had been studying and comprehending essences contained in the sword scars. His understanding of sword essence had been increasing at an amazing speed, which was far faster than when he was cultivating in Outside World or in Dragon Palace. After all, neither the Outside World nor Dragon Palace was like Sword Tomb, which had thousands of sword scars left behind by experts of sword principle. In 2 months, his progress was tremendous. Chug! A sword shadow leaped out above the rock giant's sword, then Jian Wushuang's sword struck like a viper and directly stabbed into the rock giant's stout arm, causing debris to drop down from its arm. Then, with a simple strike from Jian Wushuang, the rock giant fell down. This rock giant's comprehension of the sword essence is average, but his strength and speed are terrible. However, he is much stronger than the average gold core warrior. Just speaking on overall strength, he should be stronger than Xiao Meng, Jian Wushuang muttered. Xiao Meng. A person who fought with Jian Wushuang for a long time. However, the overall strength of the rock giant in front of him was not weaker than Xiao Meng. If it was 2 months ago, Jian Wushuang would have struggled against this rock giant, but now. Swoosh! A sword light flashed at an amazing speed, easily passing by the rock giant's sword. With a quick slash, the rock giant's whole arm crumbled. Another sword slash followed, falling directly onto the giant's head. Although the rock giant's head was very hard, it could not resist this sword, which contained sword essence of earth. All of a sudden, the whole head shattered and he crumbled into a pile of rubble. In the void nearby, seeing the sword tomb guard defeated easily by Jian Wushuang again, the absolute beauty immediately looked cold. He is very talented. In 2 months, he had such great progress. The absolute beauty said in a cold voice. His progress really is substantial, the strong man nodded and said. Second brother, make a few adjustments to the sword tomb guards I arranged, and make it more difficult for him, said the absolute beauty. Increase the difficulty, the strong man was astonished and asked. My lady, this little guy only has an initial gold core. No matter what, it's already unfair that we are treating him like someone in the exceptional gold core realm. It's too unfair if we increase the difficulty again. Not too much at all, just do as I say, said the absolute beauty. The strong man pondered for a while, but he immediately nodded helplessly. In the ancestors' land, this absolute beauty was the eldest sister, she had the last word for everything. For the test in the sword tomb, the difficulty had been increased by a lot. However, Jian Wushuang did not notice. He did not think about it too much after he defeated the second rock giant. After that, he continued to study those sword scars. Those sword scars had helped him immensely. His comprehension of sword essence was rising at an amazing speed. Chapter 127, Ceasing. Chapter 127, Ceasing. During the time Jian Wushuang stayed in the sword tomb of the ancestors' land, the Tianzong dynasty was in complete chaos, bathed in a bloody rain and filled with a murderous wind. Dragon Palace's anger was dreadful, and the revenge that Dragon Palace took on Blood Feather Tower was swift and violent. Blood Feather Tower suffered severe damage under the maniacal attacks from Dragon Palace in merely 2 months. Many hidden strongholds were razed to the ground, and a great number of assassins were killed by the experts from Dragon Palace. At the same time, other powerful and hidden forces were also crazily attacking Blood Feather Tower. These 2 months were the most miserable in all of Blood Feather Tower's history. The assassins of Blood Feather Tower tried their best to hide, not even daring to show themselves and especially not carrying out any missions. Tottering and falling, Blood Feather Tower, one of the 3 hegemonies of Tianzong dynasty, was on the verge of breaking down. However, just as everyone thought Blood Feather Tower was fade away like smoke and become history. Suddenly, the people seeking revenge against Blood Feather Tower quieted down in just 1 day. Yes, they all stopped for an unknown reason. Dragon Palace stopped attacking. Those powerful hidden forces aiming at Blood Feather Tower also stopped. Except for a few forces that wanted to take advantage of the chaos to claim vengeance, the strongest forces, the forces Blood Feather Tower feared the most, all ceased fire. They stopped, on almost the same day. And soon after, Blood Feather Tower swiftly rallied its power. So unexpected. All of this happened so quickly, startling all the other forces and experts in Tianzong dynasty. The abrupt halting of the crazy vengeance toward Blood Feather Tower was quite baffling to everyone. In Dragon Palace, many top-notch experts had returned. In a palace, the 2 palace masters and several temple masters gathered around. Palace Master White drank alone with a bottle of wine in her hand, wearing an extremely cold expression. Asshole! I won't accept it. After drinking a sip of wine, Palace Master White roared in a low voice. While Palace Master Black and the other temple masters remained silent. It's obvious that it won't take long to eliminate Blood Feather Tower entirely. Why did that person order us to stop attacking at this exact moment? What on earth is he thinking? Palace Master White was still complaining. Enough, White, you should stop complaining. Since the Temple Master gave the order in person, he must have his reasons. We only need to obey it, Palace Master Black said with a sigh. Obey it? Palace Master White snorted, feeling extremely unreconciled, but also helpless. The Temple Master referred to the Temple Master of Golden Dragon Palace. Although being the core of Golden Dragon Palace was still subordinated to it. And the Temple Master of Golden Dragon Palace was the monarch of Tianzong Dynasty. The monarch personally gave the order, so those experts in Dragon Palace dared not disobey. Beside a stone table in a manor, Wang Yuan was holding a letter in his hand and reading it with icy cold eyes. The more he read, the stiffer his expression became. After finishing, Wang Yuan was so furious that he slammed the letter on the table. Bastard! Just a Blood Feather Tower. How come it can't be wiped out? Wang Yuan's anger welled up in his body. Next to him, Dan Jiao stood respectfully in a purple robe. Young Lord, the sect master definitely has his own considerations by asking you to stop attacking Blood Feather Tower, so, before Dan Jiao finished his words, he noticed the cold stare from Wang Yuan. Dan Jiao felt as if his heart missed a beat, and he stopped talking immediately. Wang Yuan remained silent for a long time. He took a deep breath, lowered his voice, and said, since my father gave this order, I have to follow his words and stop chasing Blood Feather Tower, but, Lin Yun, the man who attacked third brother and forced him to jump into the abyss must die. As long as you don't aim at the entire Blood Feather Tower, only one purple-masked assassin should not be a problem. Dan Jiao nodded. All right then, let's deal with Lin Yun. You'd better capture him alive, Wang Yuan said with a cold snort. Yes. Dan Jiao nodded and left immediately. Third brother. Wang Yuan stood in the manor, looking up at the sky, eyes flashing, and yelled, you can rest assured. Your big brother will avenge you. At the same time, in a secret chamber, several figures in bloody robes stood respectfully in front of Su Ro. Master really ordered me to stop attacking Blood Feather Tower? Su Ro's face was veiled with a hint of chill. But, she also felt puzzled, why would a little Blood Feather Tower cause my master to back down? Since master ordered it, I'll let it go, Su Ro sighed, but a trace of grief emerged in her eyes. Poor third brother. Tianzong Dynasty soon calmed down again. As time went by, Jian Wushuang slowly faded from the memories of all the forces and experts. In the sword tomb of the ancestors' land. It had been a year and 3 months since Jian Wushuang came to the sword tomb. During that time, he had been obsessed with meditating on these sword scars, trying to comprehend their secrets. Meanwhile, 15 sword tomb guards had appeared during this time, 1 guard per month. Among the 15 sword guards, the first one was rather weak. But, starting with the second one, the strength of the sword tomb guards was generally strong, and each one was stronger than the previous one. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang's comprehension in sword essence increased while meditating on the sword scars, so he was able to defeat all the sword tomb guards in succession. If he failed to make progress for even 1 month, he would have been killed by the sword tomb guard that appeared that month. Right now, in the open space of the sword tomb, Jian Wushuang was practicing swordsmanship with his eyes closed. Streaks of sword shadows thrust out ceaselessly. Shapeless wind, boundless howling. Swiftest fire, wildest rage. Wind howls on fire, and fire rages by wind. Sword essence of gale. Sword essence of raging fire. Jian Wushuang murmured, his sword moves were getting faster and faster. Suddenly, a dazzling sword strike thrust out, directly and explosively piercing the void, tearing up everything in its path. Shwa! The sword edge stabbed in the void, and a flame wave spread out like a hurricane. The sword essences of gale and raging fire, 2 totally different sword essences were combined in this one sword move. At the same time, Jian Wushuang's eyes opened, radiating an unprecedented light. The The sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire have been combined together. It's done. Chapter 128, 2 years. Chapter 128, 2 years. At the moment, when Jian Wushuang combined the sword essences of Raging Fire and Gale, the robust man who had been silently watching from the void above the sword tomb immediately smiled and said, "It only took him 1 year and 3 months to combine 2 sword essences." "Hang, he is lucky," the absolute beauty coldly groaned. After combining them, the sword moves Jian Wushuang executed were even more terrifying than before. Since his strength had increased again, his fight with the sword tomb guards became easier. Winter came again. The outside world was filled with drifting snowflakes, but in the ancestors' land, beneath the abyss, it was still dark. It had been 2 years since Jian Wushuang came to the sword tomb. "It's been 2 years. Let the boy leave," said the absolute beauty. "In addition, give him this sword skill." "This is selfless sword technique?" The robust man had a puzzled expression. "In the past 2 years, I have constantly increased the difficulty of the sword tomb guards. It was too harsh. This sword skill is a kind of compensation for him." After finishing her words, the absolute beauty turned around and disappeared into the void. The robust man smiled and immediately dropped down. Down below, Jian Wushuang had just defeated the 24th sword tomb guard since entering the sword tomb. Not enough. Whether it's the sword essence of earth or water drop, it is not enough. Jian Wushuang frowned slowly. 9 months ago, he combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire to form the Fiery Wind sword essence. After combining them successfully, he naturally wanted to combine a 3rd sword essence. However, the combination of 3 sword essences was more difficult than 2 sword essences. After 9 months of hard work, the sword essences of Earth and Water Drop were close to combining with the Fiery Wind sword essence. But he was unsuccessful. "It's been 2 years. Jian Wushuang sighed in silence, looking at the numerous sword scars around him. In these 2 years, he studied many of the sword scars, but it was still only a small section of the whole sword tomb. He still could not comprehend the most exceptional sword scars, like the sword scars engraved on the 6 stone tablets. Even now, the sword tomb was still filled with endless opportunities. However, when he came to the sword tomb, he heard the conversation while he was barely conscious, so he knew he could only stay in the sword tomb for 2 years. Now that 2 years was up, he should be leaving if there were no accidents. Sure enough, just when the idea of leaving occurred to him, he saw a robust man descend and appear in front of him. Jian Wushuang had a strange feeling as he stared at this man. There was a sense of horror that made his heart tremble while looking at this man, even though he was standing here like a normal person, with no aura. The most important point was that no life could be felt from the robust man. He didn't seem human, more like a puppet. 2 years have passed. Follow me. The robust man's expression was cold. Jian Wushuang nodded. Although he was extremely intrigued by the sword tomb, he had to leave. "Sir, I want to ask some questions about the ancestors' land." On the way, Jian Wushuang also wanted to ask something. After all, he was still very confused and filled with countless questions, but he was rebuked by the robust man when he opened his mouth. "Shut up. Based on your current strength, you are not qualified to ask anything about the ancestors' land. You must pass a test after reaching the Yinyang Void Realm if you want to know." Jian Wushuang was startled and did not dare to ask again. "Here it is." Not long after, the robust man and Jian Wushuang came to an empty area. There were many mysterious cracks on the surface of this empty area. As the man put a special gem into the mysterious crack immediately burst with dazzling light. The space in front of Jian Wushuang split and a huge crack, which could accommodate a person, appeared. "What is this?" Jian Wushuang stared at the huge rift in shock. He had seen plenty of huge rifts on the ground. And, with his current strength, his sword strikes could easily leave a deep crack in the ground. However, this rift in front of him was not on the ground but in the void. "It's a wormhole that can connect 2 different spaces," the robust man said. Wormhole? Connect two different spaces? There is another space? Jian Wushuang could not help but ask. You will know when you get there. The robust man did not answer directly. Since you have come to the ancestors' land, we can't let you go home empty-handed. Now, this sword skill is yours. Though it is only the first half of the volume, it will be useful. Then the robust man gave Jian Wushuang the sword skill. Jian Wushuang took it and said, selfless sword technique? Okay, now you have to leave. After saying this, the robust man directly grabbed Jian Wushuang by the collar and threw him straight into the rift. Jian Wushuang was thrown into the crack without resistance and disappeared. In an extremely dark hidden cave. The cave was quite old. No one had visited it in a long time, so the wall was covered with moss. On the empty ground at the center of the cave, many mysterious cracks suddenly radiated a dazzling light. The void above the mysterious cracks was ripped apart, leaving a streak in the huge rift. Then, a figure dashed out. Bang! Jian Wushuang's body slammed into one of the stone walls, making the walls shake so much that gravel fell from them. That really hurt. Jian Wushuang groaned because of the pain. After a while, he pulled himself together and began to look around. A cave? Jian Wushuang looked at his surroundings. Where is this? Am I still in the endless mountain range? Jian Wushuang immediately stumbled along the cave path, toward the exit. The exit of this cave was blocked by a pile of stones. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang brandished his sword and directly cleaved a path through those stones, then he stepped outside of the cave. This is. When Jian Wushuang walked out of the cave and saw the vibrant primordial forest blanketed in the floating black fog, his look immediately became bizarre. The dark forest. It should be the dark forest. 3 years ago, the first time he was hunted by Blood Feather Tower. When he escaped from the Sword Marquis Mansion, in order to evade Blood Feather Tower, Simabu and he eventually decided to cross the dark forest. Jian Wushuang was familiar with this area because he had stayed here for 4 months. But what surprised him was that the other end of the wormhole was in the dark forest. The dark forest was adjacent to Tianyan province and next to Bahui Commandery. Chapter 129, Back to Tianyan Province. Chapter 129, Back to Tianyan Province. It has been 3 years since I left Sword Marquis Mansion. I should go back. Making up his mind, Jian Wushuang went straight toward Tianyan Province. On the way, he also began to delve into the selfless sword technique. The selfless sword technique the robust man gave him only had the first half of the volume. It had a total of 6 sword skills. Jian Wushuang was attracted to this volume after reading its introduction. The selfless sword technique was different from all other sword skills Jian Wushuang had ever studied. Like formless sword arts, formless sword wave, sword skill of blood and fire, and reincarnation sword skill. All those sword skills were only for one sword essence. The formless sword arts target the sword essence of Gale, while the formless sword wave target the sword essence of Earth. But the selfless sword technique target 4 sword essences, not just one. No matter which sword essence you comprehended, you could study and delve into the selfless sword technique. Furthermore, the selfless sword technique was even more suitable for warriors who had combined different sword essences. The power of the 6 sword skills depended on the comprehension level of sword essence. Jian Wushuang had now perfectly combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire. What he needed was a sword skill which could execute 2 sword essences at the same time. The selfless sword technique was more or less suitable. Jian Wushuang immediately began to delve into the first move of the selfless sword technique. The first move was called Idealistic Form. 2 days later, on his way through the dark forest, Jian Wushuang took out his triple kill sword. Idealism. Solipsism. Jian Wushuang murmured in a deep thought. The triple kill sword flew out like a streak of light and pounded on a strong tree. The sword shadow, that combined both sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire, exploded. Bang! The trunk of the entire tree was directly pierced and a circular hole with a diameter of more than 20 centimeters appeared. The center of the entire tree was completely hollowed out. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang's eyes lightened. This is idealistic form, its power is very strong. Jian Wushuang thought, I only combine 2 sword essences, forming the fiery wind sword essence. Its power would be even more terrifying if I could combine 3 or 4 sword essences. Jian Wushuang was also very excited. The experience in the ancestors' land benefited him a lot. The first was his cultivation. Although he focused his mind and body on delving into sword essences over those 2 years, leaving little time for cultivation, his spiritual power still increased faster than ordinary warriors simply because of the heavenly creation skill. Now, he had already broken through from the initial gold core and reached the profound gold core realm. Actually, his supreme golden core was 100 times stronger than an expert at the same level. When he was in the initial gold core realm, the strength he could release was stronger than normal warriors in the exceptional gold core realm. Now, after reaching the profound gold core realm, his strength would be matchless among the warriors in the gold core realm when he released his full power. And his progress in sword essence was even greater. His comprehension in all 4 sword essences had advanced by leaps and bounds. The sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire had even been combined perfectly. Now, he had also had the selfless sword technique. His strength as a whole was much stronger than it was 2 years ago. A few days later, Jian Wushuang walked out of the dark forest, and what appeared in front of him was the Tianyan province that he was quite familiar with. Tianyan province. Bahui Commandery. I am back. It was still bustling in the Bahui Commandery. While wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat, Jian Wushuang appeared in a restaurant. Near the window on the 2nd floor of the restaurant, having ordered a pot of wine, he drank alone with his eyes focused on the huge mansion outside of the window. It was also bustling in the mansion, and Jian Wushuang could even see some disciples of the Marquis' mansion practicing sword skills on the drill ground. It is the same as before, Jian Wushuang secretly thought. Sword Marquis Mansion. His roots. He lived there for a full 16 years. 3 years ago, Sword Marquis Mansion was greatly troubled because of me. 4 elders also died because of me. I don't even know the current state of the Sword Pavilion. Jian Wushuang was anxious. In the Sword Pavilion, his father had worked hard for a long time. When he was young, his aim was to inherit the position of Sword Pavilion Master. Who could have expected that an incident would occur when he was taking pains to accomplish his goal? After that incident, he, the future Sword Pavilion Master, had to leave the Tianyan province, and the 4 great elders of the Sword Pavilion were all killed. It can be said that the backbone of the Sword Pavilion was gone overnight. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was very anxious about the current state of the Sword Pavilion. But at this moment, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. Heavy footsteps were heard from the outside streets, and the whole street shook slightly. People in the middle of the street scattered. Jian Wushuang looked through the window to the source of the footsteps. What he saw were 3 large wildebeests slowly coming from the end of the street. Wildebeests were generally a spirit beast in the spiritual sea realm. Their strength was normal. But they were gentle and relatively easy to tame, and their speed was amazingly fast. Therefore, some big forces would tame a few wildebeests for riding. On the 3 wildebeests, there were 3 figures. 2 men and a woman. Jian Wushuang could not help but tilt his lips when he saw the woman on the middle wildebeest. Jian Menger. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. This was beyond his expectations. The first disciple of the Marquis' mansion he met after coming back was Jian Menger, who had tangled with him before. Profound Gold Core Realm. Not bad. Jian Wushuang was smiling. He could see that the aura of spiritual power from Jian Menger had reached the profound Gold Core Realm. It must be noted that Jian Menger's age was the same as his. He was only 19 years old this year. A 19-year-old warrior at the profound Gold Core Realm was already very marvelous. When she was defeated by me 3 years ago, she went to the Tianyuan sword sect to practice with her great master. According to speculation, within 3 years, she was not allowed to leave the Tianyuan sword sect. She also came back today. What a coincidence! Jian Wushuang's expression became odd. Under his watch, Jian Menger and the other 2 people on the wildebeests entered Sword Marquis Mansion. At the same time, Jian Wushuang heard the comments from the people around him. Is the girl on the wildebeest Jian Menger, the exceptional genius from Sword Marquis Mansion? Yes, it's her. It is said that she went to the Tianyuan sword sect to practice after being defeated by Jian Wushuang 3 years ago. She had never shown up since then. Now she finally returns after 3 years. It's normal to come back. After all, the situation Sword Marquis Mansion is terrible. If she doesn't come back, Sword Marquis Mansion will disappear. Several warriors were talking about it. Although their voice was lowered, Jian Wushuang could still clearly hear what they said. Sword Marquis Mansion will disappear if Jian Menger didn't return. Jian Wushuang slightly narrowed his eyes and in his dark pupil as a streak of cold light flashed. Chapter 130, Inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. Chapter 130, Inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. The 3 warriors were still talking, and Jian Wushuang was listening carefully. Hey, I heard that Sword Marquis Mansion had already sent out invitations to the 3 chiefs of the Fierce Beast Gang to meet at Tianxianja tomorrow. I am afraid the purpose of the meeting is to fight and see who is stronger. One of them has been a leader in Bahui Commandery for many years, while the other one, the Fierce Beast Gang, led by the 3 Su brothers, has just appeared recently. This will be an interesting fight. I'm afraid that Sword Marquis Mansion will be in danger this time. Although the Fierce Beast Gang appeared not long ago, the 3 Su brothers are well-known experts in Tianyan province, especially the eldest brother, Su Long, who is an expert on the Earthly Dragon list. There is no one who can compete with him in the entire Sword Marquis Mansion. That's right. Sword Marquis Mansion is also aware of the pressure, so they urgently requested for Jian Menger to come back. After all, she is a core disciple in Tianyuan sword sect, and her power is quite impressive as well. Everything will be settled tomorrow. The 3 men talked casually, ignoring the people around them. After hearing what they said, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. The 3 Su brothers? Su Long. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. He knew that Su Long ranked 91st on the Earthly Dragon list, which was even a few places higher than Su Lai. If it was in 2 years ago, Su Long's strength was enough for Jian Wushuang to pay a little attention to him. But now, Jian Wushuang could completely ignore him. The Fierce Beast Gang will fight against Sword Marquis Mansion to see who is stronger tomorrow. Interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled and then continued to drink. The next day, inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. The news that Sword Marquis Mansion would meet the Fierce Beast Gang at Celestial Immortal Residence today had already spread throughout the entire Bahui Commandery. So, the original lively Celestial Immortal Residence was empty and lonely today. Everyone knew that there might be a fierce battle at Celestial Immortal Residence today. Naturally, ordinary warriors didn't want to get involved. Of course, there was one exception. It was a black-robed man with a bamboo hat and a long sword. He had been drinking alone in the corner of the 2nd floor of the Celestial Immortal Residence since early morning. The waiters there came to persuade him to leave, but he didn't say a word and remained sitting there. At noon, footsteps could be heard from the stairs, followed by a large group of people. Those people came from Sword Marquis Mansion, and Jian Wushuang knew some of them. The leader of them was Jian Xinhong, who was the Sword Marquis Mansion master. Jian Xinhong's cultivation exuded the aura of the exceptional gold core realm. In regards to spiritual power, he was obviously the strongest present. And next to Jian Xinhong, there were 3 others in the primordial gold core realm. It was Jian Menger and the 2 core disciples of Tianyuan sword sect. It should be a while before the 3 Su brothers arrive, so let's sit down first, said Jian Xinhong. Then he, Jian Menger, and 2 other disciples of the Tianyuan sword sect sat down at the table. The other warriors of Sword Marquis Mansion stood next to them. "Menger, today's meeting is up to you three," said Jian Xinhong while frowning, full of worries. "Our Sword Marquis Mansion never thought to throw the three Su brothers out of Bahui Commandery. Instead, we were willing to make concessions and give them Bahui Commandery's leadership. We can even give them some other benefits, as long as they stop attacking." Jian Xinhong spoke in a hopeless manner. Before, Sword Marquis Mansion was indeed the overlord of Bahui Commandery. But since the Fierce Beast Gang appeared, they had suffered suppression from the Fierce Beast Gang in all aspects, not even having the strength to fight back. They had no choice since strength determined everything. The three leaders of the Fierce Beast Gang, which were the three Su brothers, all possessed excellent strength. The eldest brother, Su Long, was even on the Earthly Dragon list. An expert like him was not someone that Sword Marquis Mansion could compete against. "Mansion Master, don't worry. As long as we three are here, Su Long won't dare to go too far. After all, behind us is the Tianyuan Sword Sect. He should at least care about the reputation of Tianyuan Sword Sect. What's more, even if it really comes down to a battle, the two of us and Menger could defeat Su Long together," said the purple-haired disciple with a laugh. Experts on the Earthly Dragon list are indeed very powerful, but his strength is also limited. Moreover, Su Long is only ranked 91st, and his strength should only be a little stronger than the average warrior in the exceptional Gold Core realm. Both Meng Yu and I are also in the exceptional Gold Core realm. Together, with Menger, whose strength is comparable to the exceptional Gold Core realm, we can easily deal with Su Long, said the other disciple of Tianyuan Sword Sect. These two disciples, of the Tianyuan Sword Sect, were named Meng Yu and Zhu Yu. Both of them were in the exceptional Gold Core realm, and they were pretty confident in their strength. "Don't be too confident. The experts on the Earthly Dragon list are not simple," Jian Xinhong shook his head and said. He had personally faced Su Long, but had to run away after just 3 moves. He knew clearly that there was a huge gap between the experts of the Earthly Dragon list and the ordinary warriors of the exceptional Gold Core realm. Every expert on the Earthly Dragon list was able to defeat a group of warriors in the exceptional Gold Core realm alone. This was a fact. Unfortunately, senior brother Ling Feng went out to travel. Otherwise, with him here, Su Long would not dare to be so unbridled, Jian Menger said in a low voice. Ling Feng was the strongest among the young generation of the Tianyuan Sword Sect. He was the strongest genius that Jian Menger had ever met. He was only 23 years old, but he had already ranked 41st on the Earthly Dragon list. He was the only person that was listed on the Earthly Dragon list in the entire Tianyuan Sword Sect. Ling Feng had a good relationship with her, and they already shared some special feelings. Menger, the 3 Su brothers are not qualified to compete with senior brother Ling Feng. Besides, we 3 can defeat him easily, Meng Yu and Zhu Yu said without taking it seriously. Menger, I heard that you were defeated by a person in Sword Marquis Mansion 3 years ago. Where is that person? Now that Sword Marquis Mansion is in danger, why is he not here? Meng Yu asked suddenly. Jian Wushuang. Jian Menger thought, with a slight cold expression on her face. The words of Jian Wushuang had left a scar in her heart. And even after 3 years, it was still there. She would never forget that 3 years ago, the useless person that she looked down upon had surpassed her in only 2 months, causing her to trip at the last step of her plan. During these 3 years, she did her best to cultivate and improve her strength while in the Tianyuan Sword Sect. She put in more effort than ordinary people. The most important reason for her to do so was that she wanted to compete with Jian Wushuang again. She wanted to erase the humiliation she suffered 3 years ago and extricate herself from the nightmare brought on by Jian Wushuang. She thought she could meet Jian Wushuang and fight with him again when she returned to Sword Marquis Mansion this time. However, she did not expect that when she returned, she would hear that Jian Wushuang had left Sword Marquis Mansion 3 years ago, and no one knew where he was. Chapter 131, 3 Su Brothers. Chapter 131, 3 Su Brothers. He only defeated you 3 years ago by luck. In the past 3 years, you have reached an excellent cultivation level. With plenty of treasures to assist you, your strength has been improving day by day, which is not something ordinary people can achieve. I do not believe that person who defeated you 3 years ago is qualified to be your opponent now, Meng Yu sneered and said. Maybe. Jian Meng'er nodded slightly. She somewhat agreed. Indeed, she was the core disciple of the Tianyuan sword sect. In the past 3 years, she had received the best resources for cultivation, and a large number of experts personally instructed her, which helped her strength improved greatly. But for Jian Wushuang, he was alone, no instructions from experts, and no cultivation resources. How much improvement could he have made in the past 3 years? Maybe he has not even achieved the gold core realm yet. How stupid of me to treat him as my opponent, letting him be a stumbling block in my heart for the past 3 years, Jian Meng'er thought, and smiled indifferently. Those 2 disciples of the Tianyuan sword sect continued talking with Jian Meng'er. They did not know that what they said was clearly heard by the black-robed swordsman, who was wearing a bamboo hat and sitting in the corner. The black-robed swordsman was listening without saying anything, just drinking alone. However, his face, which was hidden under the bamboo hat, had a weird smile. Dang! A low and powerful sound of footsteps was heard from the stairs again. Suddenly, the people in the Sword Marquis mansion all looked serious. A bunch of people walked up, with 3 walking at the front. Those 3 leaders were very strong, and they looked a little bit like each other. The aura they released was very tyrannical, especially the large dark man in the middle. His aura was as violent as an ancient fierce beast. This person was Su Long. Jian Meng'er, Meng Yu, and Zhu Yu, all of them looked grim. Although they spoke in an easy and relaxed way, they still felt a little bit scared when they faced Su Long. They could even sense who was stronger just from the aura he released. Jian Xinhong, what did you gather us 3 here for? Just be straight, Su Long seemed unconcerned and sat on a chair. His 2 brothers and other beastly people were standing beside him. Su Long, the reason I invited you to meet here today is to discuss the armistice between Sword Marquis Mansion and the Fierce Beast Gang, Jian Xinhong said seriously. In the past 1 month, there were several fights between us, no matter publicly or secretly, both brought us a big loss. Without waiting for Jian Xinhong to finish, Su Long interrupted him and said, You are wrong, you are the one suffering a big loss, not us. After the battles, my Fierce Beast Gang did indeed lose a lot of people, but we also gained more reputation. More and more people joined to help accomplish our goal. Many of them had great hatred towards your Sword Marquis Mansion. So our overall strength is not getting weaker. Instead, we are getting stronger. So, if you just want to talk nonsense with me, then we do not need to talk anymore. Jian Xinhong looked a little bit awkward. He knew what Su Long said was pretty true. And that was the key reason that he did not dare to continue fighting with the Fierce Beast Gang. If they keep fighting with them, they would just make the Sword Marquis Mansion more and more miserable. In the end, they might be destroyed by the Fierce Beast Gang. Su Long, my Sword Marquis Mansion is willing to make some concessions, Jian Xinhong seriously said. From today on, we will try our best to restrain our disciples from conflicting with your people. At the same time, the title of Bahui Commandery Hegemon is yours. Besides that, we will give you 10% of our properties. What do you think? Oh? Su Long looked a little bit excited. That is something worth talking about. However, 10% is too little. 10% is a lot, Jian Xinhong said in a low voice. Mr. Su Long, Jian Meng'er suddenly stood up and said, My name is Jian Meng'er, a disciple of Tianyuan Sword Sect. My great master is the elder of Tianyuan Sword Sect, Shui Hanxin. For the sake of her, please don't be so hard on our Sword Marquis Mansion. Jian Meng'er sounded very polite, but the truth was that she was giving Su Long pressure using the Tianyuan Sword Sect and her great master, Shui Hanxin. Tianyuan Sword Sect? Su Long glanced at Jian Meng'er and said with a slight smile, I heard a long time ago that a girl from Sword Marquis Mansion became a core disciple of the Tianyuan Sword Sect. So you are that girl. But, you are looking down on me. Tianyuan sword sect is indeed very powerful, and it's not someone I dare to provoke. However, you are just a core disciple, you can't represent the Tianyuan sword sect. In regards to your great master Shui Hanshin? In the entire Tianyuan sword sect, except those old Yinyang void realms, Ling Feng is the only person who is qualified to be my opponent. Shui Hanshin is nothing to me. After saying this, Su Long looked towards Jian Xinhong again and continued, Jian Xinhong, don't think getting several disciples from the Tianyuan sword sect can scare me. Let me tell you the truth, I want 90% of your properties. No negotiation. Otherwise, Sword Marquis Mansion will become history. 90%? Jian Xinhong looked at him coldly. Jian Menger also had a cold expression. You are looking to die. Meng Yu and Zhu Yu beside them were super angry. Menger, stop talking to him. Let's directly fight with him, he needs a lesson from the disciples of Tianyuan sword sect, Meng Yu cried, with a low voice. Exactly, he isn't even ranked 90th on the earthly dragon list. We don't need to be afraid of him, Zhu Yu also cried out angrily. Jian Menger did not say anything. However, the light purple long sword appearing in her hands had shown her attitude. You disciples of Tianyuan sword sect really do not understand the situation clearly. Seeing their actions, Su Long laughed. Then he glanced at a burly man next to him. Third brother, you deal with those three young guys. After all, they are core disciples of Tianyuan sword sect. We can't kill them, but we can teach them a lesson, Su Long said. Don't worry big brother, I can handle it, said Su Bao, the third of the three Su brothers. He smiled, then walked forward with heavy steps. You three, fight with me together, Su Bao said coldly. You are looking to die. Meng Yu and Zhu Yu were super angry. As disciples of Tianyuan sword sect, they were quite proud of themselves. And since they entered this restaurant, Su Long was their only opponent. In regards to Su Long's two brothers, they were nothing to them. So when they heard what Su Long said, they were infuriated. Soon after, Zhu Yu waved his sword, releasing his spiritual power, and stabbed towards Su Bao. Chapter 132, You Bothered Me. Chapter 132, You Bothered Me. Zhu Yu took action before Jian Menger and Meng Yu were still standing there. An awe-inspiring spirit fiercely burst out. Apparently, what Zhu Yu showed was the Boundless Heaven sword art, one of the four sword arts of the Tianyuan sword sect. With a raging chop, his long sword displayed a tremendous power. That's a joke. Su Bao grinned and then clenched his big hand, generating a terrifying spiritual power in his palm. In the next moment, a straightforward fist struck out. It seemed like a giant elephant was dashing toward them. The fist struck the long sword, making the sword and its blade bend. Then, Su Bao's powerful fist continued moving towards Zhu Yu. What? Zhu Yu was shocked. He did not expect that the move he earnestly studied would be brushed aside so easily. The fist struck Zhu Yu. Puff! A large mouthful of blood immediately ejected from Zhu Yu's mouth as his body was launched backward. Zhu Yu? Meng Yu was shocked. Shua, a straightforward sword shadow, instantly pierced towards Su Bao's throat cunningly. Good. With a brilliant smile, Su Bao took a large step and clenched his right fist. A frightening power ran through his burly arm, spurting out. An overwhelming fist with a stronger power. Bang! The same scene happened again. A great amount of blood ejected from Meng Yu's mouth, and in the process of his retreat, he bumped the bench beside him. Due to the horrible impact, one of the benches was thrown by the incredible force. Coincidentally, the direction in which this bench was thrown was precisely where the black-robed swordsman Saturday. Detecting the bench that was flying towards him, the black-robed swordsman immediately waved his hand, radiating enough spiritual power to break it into pieces. I just want to drink quietly. But you are bothering me. The cold voice of the black-robed swordsman abruptly sounded in the inn. Hum. Everyone present quickly looked toward black-robed swordsman while frowning. The news that Sword Marquis Mansion would compete with the fierce beast gang in Celestial Immortal Residence today had spread long ago. Thus, no guests would come to Celestial Immortal Residence today. But the black-robed swordsman had stayed here all the day. When the two groups of people arrived there just now, they also noticed the black-robed swordsman, but they didn't care about him. But now, this guy, Jian Meng'er slightly frowned. The moment she saw the figure of the black-robed swordsman, she felt very familiar as if they were an acquaintance, but she couldn't tell why. Actually, she should be familiar with him. Because the real identity of the black-robed swordsman was Jian Wushuang, who had given her nightmares many times over these last 3 years. Jian Wushuang simply pulled his bamboo hat down so that nobody could see his appearance. I'm talking to you. Jian Wushuang's voice sounded again. You have bothered me. What should you do? Hearing these words, all the people from Sword Marquis Mansion were stunned. Unlike them, Su Bao yelled directly, "You reckless bastard, get out." When yelling at Jian Wushuang, Su Bao reached toward him with his big hand at the same time. It seemed that Su Bao was going to grab Jian Wushuang's throat and throw him directly from the window. But the instant Su Bao approached Jian Wushuang, whoosh! A fierce sword light swept by. Incredibly fast. The flash vanished immediately. Nobody was able to see the orbit of the sword light clearly. What they just saw was a fleeting sword light. Jian Wushuang was still drinking at the table and deliberately swirled the wine in his glass. However, Su Bao, who was originally going to grab Jian Wushuang's throat, was suddenly stiff. What happened? Why is that guy standing still? Zhu Yu said, feeling a little stunned. Shut up, Jian Meng'er said angrily. Zhu Yu was startled by this. Dead. Su Bao is dead. Jian Xinhong said with astonished eyes, can't you see the blood leaking from Su Bao's neck? He was killed in just one move. What? Meng Yu, Zhu Yu and those warriors from Sword Marquis Mansion were all shocked. Yes, there is bloodstain. His aura began to dissipate. Is he really dead? Everyone was stunned. It should be known that it was Su Bao who attacked Meng Yu and Zhu Yu with successive fists, and caused them serious wounds, which showed his strength. However, he was killed by only one move in an instant. Plop! Eventually, the corpse of Su Bao fell down weakly. Third brother. A heartrending and shrill growl sounded. It shocked the Sword Marquis Mansion, but it riled up the fierce beast gang. Su Long and Su Hu were startled and angry in particular. They stared at Jian Wushuang in rage, with an amazing killing intent. You killed my third brother, so I will take your life. Su Long immediately became furious. The husky figure violently rushed forward while releasing an aura as fearsome as a huge beast, which instantly overwhelmed the audience. As soon as they detected the aura, both Meng Yu and Zhu Yu instantly turned pale. Before that, they thought they were able to compete with Su Long, or maybe even defeat and kill him if all three of them worked together. But now, they realized how absurd and naive they were. Su Long didn't attack them at all. The mere release of his aura was enough to instantly frighten them, causing them to lose the courage required to fight against him. Too strong. Is that the strength of an expert on the earthly dragon list? Meng Yu and Zhu Yu gaped as they saw what was happening. Jian Meng'er also stared with a solemn face. The moment Su Long rushed forward, a sword light flashed again. The sword light was beautiful and charming, as if intoxicating. The sword light was gliding. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but it was magnified in the depths of Su Long's eyes. A hint of fear rose in Su Long's eyes, then that sword light glided through his chest. While wearing the bamboo hat and hiding his face as much as possible, Jian Wushuang had already appeared behind Su Long with some blood dripping from the edge of his triple-kill sword. Su Long's figure became stiff with his fearsome aura completely vanishing in an instant. Then, he turned his head dully and slowly spoke in broken words, "You, who are you?" Just then, plop! Su Long fell down directly. Jian Wushuang pulled his bamboo hat down and glanced at the second oldest Su Hu, the only existing one of the three Su brothers. Both your elder brother and young brother died. Now, it's your turn. As soon as his voice fell, a beautiful sword light flashed once again. Su Hu stared with round eyes, falling down the next moment. Chapter 133, Jian Wushuang. Chapter 133, Jian Wushuang. Silence. The entire restaurant was so silent that you could hear a pin drop. Well, everyone from Sword Marquis Mansion and the Fierce Beast Gang who were still alive were all stunned. Were the well-known three Su brothers of Tianyan province dead? The third oldest Su Bao was the first one to take action, defeating Meng Yu and Zhu Yu while seriously wounding them with 2 consecutive punches. However, he was also the first one to die, being killed in just one move. Next, the boss, Su Long, attacked by himself. As he was ranked on the Earthly Dragon list, the instantaneous release of his aura frightened everyone present. However, he was also killed in a single move. As for the second oldest, Su Hu, he hadn't even taken action before was killed in one move. The three Su brothers were defeated in only 3 moves. One for each of them. There was no room for struggling. What kind of strength was it? Horrifying. Terrifying. Everyone looked at the black-robed swordsman in alarm. It was this black-robed swordsman that killed the 3 Su brothers within a moment. Dang! 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 The black-robed swordsman walked towards the direction where people from the Sword Marquis Mansion were gathered. At that moment, everyone from Sword Marquis Mansion held their breath. Both Meng Yu and Zhu Yu cleared their throats and trembled slightly. Everyone understood that the black-robed swordsman, who was able to kill the 3 Su brothers easily, was also able to kill anyone here easily. The black-robed swordsman walked slowly, but he didn't intend to attack anyone. He walked towards the stairs and just happened to pass by Jian Meng'er. There was also a hint of fear in her heart. When the black-robed swordsman passed by and didn't continue to attack, she felt relieved. But then, she noticed the long sword he carried. Ah, what's that? Jian Meng'er's pupils suddenly shrank. She had practiced with that long sword for 2 months, so she was quite familiar with it. The triple kill sword, it's the triple kill sword. Jian Meng'er recognized it immediately, then she shouted, Jian Wushuang, you are Jian Wushuang. The black-robed swordsman who was going downstairs stopped abruptly, but it was only for an instant, then he continued to walk downstairs. Jian Wushuang, Jian Meng'er shouted with her hands clenching. Meng'er, what the hell are you talking about? Jian Xinhong shouted abruptly, Jian Wushuang died 3 years ago, how could he be here? Mansion Master? Jian Meng'er looked at Jian Xinhong astonishedly. However, Jian Xinhong winked at her. Jian Meng'er frowned and then recovered herself, saying immediately, maybe. You must be wrong, Jian Xinhong shouted in a low voice. Clean up the corpses of the 3 Su brothers. As long as they are dead, we don't need to worry about the Fierce Beast Gang. As for you, Jian Xinhong coldly looked towards the warriors of the Fierce Beast Gang who were still alive. Mansion Master, please have mercy. We will disband the Fierce Beast Gang immediately. Mansion Master, we beg of you, please have mercy. These warriors who just reached the initial Gold Core realm immediately begged for mercy. It's ridiculous to beg me for mercy, said Jian Xinhong, then he sneered and followed with a direct attack. After a few moments, all of the warriors were immediately killed. Afterward, the people from Sword Marquis Mansion began to clean up the corpses. At that time Jian Xinhong pulled Jian Meng'er aside and asked her in a low voice, Meng'er, are you sure that the black-robed swordsman you saw just now was Jian Wushuang? His face was hidden under the bamboo hat, so I wasn't able to see it clearly. Jian Meng'er shook her head and continued speaking, but I recognized the sword he carried. It was the same triple kill sword that I practiced with for 2 months. What's more, I could feel a hint of familiarity from the figure of the black-robed swordsman. Thus, I'm quite sure that he is Jian Wushuang. he is definitely Jian Wushuang. The triple kill sword and his figure are the evidence. Jian Wushuang always has the triple kill sword. And you felt his figure was familiar. Besides, he also helped us end this disaster by killing the 3 Su brothers. Jian Xinhong smiled and said, "This guy who disappeared for 3 years has finally come back. But, how was he able to acquire such great strength?" Jian Menger looked a bit unnatural. How could he be so strong? An expert like Su Long, who was ranked on the earthly dragon list, was also killed by Jian Wushuang with only one move. Only one move. How could his strength be so incredible? Even her senior brother, Ling Feng, whom she considered as her Mr. Right, was unlikely to kill Su Long in a single move. She came back with confidence, prepared to compete with Jian Wushuang and erase the humiliation she suffered 3 years ago. However, the gap between them became wider and wider, which made her almost desperate. It now appeared that was a joke. That bastard, how did he make such great progress? It was hard for Jian Menger to accept the facts. But, her only choice was to believe it. Jian Wushuang left Celestial Immortal Residence and walked out into the street. But he couldn't help glancing backward at the Celestial Immortal Residence, shaking his head secretly. Although I deliberately hid my face and even changed the voice, Jian Menger was still able to recognize me. It was because of the triple kill sword that she was able to recognize me. Jian Wushuang could do nothing about this. However, even though he was recognized, he didn't intend to stay behind and chat with them. If he went back to Sword Marquis Mansion with his true identity, it would be a disaster for Sword Marquis Mansion. Just like what happened 3 years ago, or even worse. Anyway, Sword Marquis Mansion is in good condition and the Sword Pavilion is still there. So it's fine. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Just now, he noticed that there were some experts following Jian Xinhong from Sword Marquis Mansion. Because they had the marks of Sword Pavilion on their clothes, it proved that the Sword Pavilion still existed in Sword Marquis Mansion. Jian Wushuang stayed there for another day. He didn't feel relieved until after the 3 Su brothers were dead and the whole Fierce Beast gang was completely torn apart by Sword Marquis Mansion. After that, he went to the Gladiator Arena to visit Bai Chong. Jian Wushuang was thankful to Bai Chong. Not only did Bai Chong help him when he was young, Bai Chong also helped hold back the assassins, with a group of experts from the Gladiator Arena, when he was being chased by Blood Feather Tower 3 years ago. Anyway, Jian Wushuang owed him a lot. However, it was a pity, Jian Wushuang was unable to meet Bai Chong at the Gladiator Arena. It was said that Bai Chong left Bahui Commandery 3 years ago, and no one knew where he was. Jian Wushuang could also do nothing about this. He also left at that night. After resting assured about Sword Marquis Mansion, he was going to get his revenge on Blood Feather Tower. The day I return is the day all you demons die. Now, he was back. Chapter 134, Clearwater Stronghold. Chapter 134, Clearwater Stronghold. In one of the Golden Dragon subsidiary palaces in Tianyan Province. Jian Wushuang, still dressed in black and wearing a bamboo hat, directly came to the counter and took out his token from Dragon Palace. "Sir, come with me please." After the blue-haired woman at the front counter saw the token, she immediately led Jian Wushuang into a private room. "Give me all the files on Blood Feather Tower within my access permission, including strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyan Province, the number of experts, and the strength of those strongholds etc. Besides that, give me a copy of the Earthly Dragon List as well," Jian Wushuang said. The Earthly Dragon List would be renewed every once in a while. Since 2 years had passed, the list should have changed a lot. "Yes sir," the blue-haired woman nodded and said. Soon she gave Jian Wushuang a lot of files. Jian Wushuang read them carefully. "Oh. It is as I expected. Blood Feather Tower did suffer a desperate revenge after the battle on Quiet Moon Lake." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly when he saw the information about the battle. When Dragon Palace heard of his death, the two palace masters of Dragon Palace along with many top experts retaliated against Blood Feather Tower in a full-scale attack. Many strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianzong Dynasty suffered a bloodbath and lots of experts were killed, which was one of the few setbacks Blood Feather Tower had gone through. But it just lasted for 2 months and suddenly died down. Blood Feather Tower had undoubtedly been in danger and was about to be destroyed, but why did everything suddenly die down? Jian Wushuang didn't understand. If there was no particular reason, they would not have stopped so easily. It seems that the background of Blood Feather Tower is not as simple as it seems, Jian Wushuang thought. Then he looked at another file. It was about the distribution of strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyan Province and their strength. It said that the strength of Blood Feather Tower is much weaker because of the bloodbath 2 years ago. Now they behaved more carefully than before and their strongholds are located at easier to conceal places. Even Golden Dragon Palace could only locate 3 strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyan Province. It astonished Jian Wushuang. It should be known that Tianyan Province was an important place for Blood Feather Tower. However, there were as many as 108 commanderies in Tianyan Province. How could they run it well with only 3 strongholds? They need at least a dozen. But their strongholds were secluded. Even as the best at collecting information in Tianzong Dynasty, Golden Dragon Palace could only locate 3 of their strongholds. Among the 3, 2 of them were small. Only the last one was an important one. Clearwater Stronghold? Jian Wushuang squinted. Clearwater Stronghold, located in Clearwater Commandery of Tianyan Province. There were a lot of copper-masked and silver-masked assassins, as well as many golden-masked assassins. Most importantly, there were 2 purple-masked assassins and an intelligence director in it. While in those 2 small strongholds, there were only a couple of golden-masked assassins, Jian Wushuang was not interested in them at all. Blood Feather Tower has established a well-defined intelligence system. Once I take action, Blood Feather Tower will notice immediately. It's impossible to get a second chance. Therefore, the action must be fast, relentless, and bring a great loss. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. Losing some gold-masked assassins was nothing to Blood Feather Tower, who was one of the 3 hegemons in Tianzong Dynasty. They would not care. However, it would be different if they lost some purple-masked assassins. Especially in the battle 2 years ago, Blood Feather Tower had paid a huge price, which made purple-masked assassins even more important. If Jian Wushuang could kill several purple-masked assassins this time, it would definitely be a big loss for Blood Feather Tower. These 2 purple-masked assassins are in the Yinyang Void Realm, but only the initial Yinyang Void Realm. They are about the same as the purple-masked assassin who was severely wounded. Even his right hand was disabled by me near Quiet Moon Lake 2 years ago. It's possible to kill them both, Jian Wushuang thought. An assassin's strength in the same realm could vary. Some were stronger and some were weaker. These 2 purple-masked assassins in Clearwater Stronghold were weaker ones. 2 years ago, Jian Wushuang severely hurt and almost killed a purple-masked assassin with his soul-devouring secret skill. Now, even without using it, he was quite sure that he could kill them with only his comprehension in sword essence. I will take Clearwater Stronghold. Jian Wushuang decided. Of course, the reason he targeted Clearwater Stronghold was not only because of those 2 purple-masked assassins, but also because of another man. He was the one who was in charge of the intelligence system there. His name was Aning. Jian Wushuang would never forget him. 3 years ago, some assassins from Blood Feather Tower chased him from Sword Marquis Mansion. And their leader was Aning. What's more, it was he who poisoned his aunt with the heart-biting poison, which had tortured his aunt for years. His aunt was caught by Aning at that time, and he didn't know how his aunt was doing now. Aning, you old bastard, Jian Wushuang's eyes were ice cold. Then he called the blue-haired woman and told her, prepare me a griffin and something special. A huge rift in Clearwater Commandery. It was a remote rift, embosomed in hills. As usual, few people came here, not even to pass by. In the thick woods at the center of the rift, was a huge courtyard. It was Clearwater's stronghold, a quite important place for the top assassin organization in Tianzong Dynasty, Blood Feather Tower. On the top of a mountain in the rift, Jian Wushuang stood quietly, dressed in black and wearing a bamboo hat. Watching through the void, his cold eyes stared at the courtyard below. Blood Feather Tower has heavy security. To enter the stronghold, assassins of Blood Feather Tower have to signal one another, and the password alternates every day. Besides that, the killers are well trained. It is impossible to sneak in by getting the password from them. The only way to get in was, kill his way in. A stream of killing intent could be seen rising from his body. At this moment, thunder growled over the void and the sky became dark. Then a heavy rain began falling a second later. The rain fell on the ground and the earth got wet. It raining, palm outstretched, Jian Wushuang felt the rain slapping on the back of his hands. Since the weather is favoring me, let me enjoy slaughtering them in the heavy rain. Jian Wushuang changed into a straw rain cape. Then, he grabbed his sword and directly walked toward the huge courtyard in the center of the rift. Chapter 135, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 1. Chapter 135, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 1. Swoosh! The heavy rain relentlessly poured onto the ground. At the center of a rift, there was a large courtyard consisting of an inner court and an outer court. Under the roof of the outer court, many figures in black robes were standing or sitting on the ground. All of them wore masks, in which most of them were copper masks. There was only a small number of silver masks and 4 gold masks. There was no sound in the outer court except for the rain. Even the assassins of Blood Feather Tower that gathered there remained quiet. While behind the gate, right in the front of the courtyard, a silver-masked assassin was standing with folded arms. He raised his head and looked up at the dim void. "When will the rain stop?" the silver-masked assassin murmured. Suddenly, boom! The door behind him was blown open and flew straight ahead. What the hell? The silver-masked assassin standing behind the door was the first to be attacked. It was because he was so close to the door that he couldn't get away from it when it came flying at him. Bang! The big and heavy door hit him, which heavily injured him. He instantly spat out blood as he flew back, landing in the center of the courtyard. What? The whole courtyard stirred. The assassins of Blood Feather Tower stood up as they all looked toward the gate. A figure, wearing a bamboo hat and straw rain cape, stood at the door with a long sword on his back. Seeing him, all the assassins' breath turned cold. Who is it? An assassin shouted. Jian Wushuang ignored him. He walked slowly to the courtyard, one step at a time. Each step was firm and steady as if it contained magic power. Buzz! The raindrops gathered on the ground and rippled. The waves changed constantly, which made the assassins of Blood Feather Tower feel like the world was disappearing. They could only see the changing waves, the slowly walking Jian Wushuang, and the powerful sword essence radiating from him. What's that? What kind of trick is this? All of them were astonished. They didn't know that it was just an extreme use of the sword essence of Waterdrop. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang stopped and slightly raised his head, showing a bright and handsome face under the bamboo hat. However, his face was cold and his dark eyes were full of killing intent, as if a sharp weapon was aiming towards them. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang swiftly arrived in front of the dozens of killers who were closest to him. Chew! Ice-cold sword light flashed at once. At first sight, the sword light was more like a single drop of heavy rain. What's this? Water drop? Such a big water drop? Some of the weaker assassins didn't even react. Be careful. Get out of the way. The assassins who had reacted shouted at them. But it was already too late. Cold sword light flashed and swept past their throats. Regardless of whether they were copper-masked assassins or silver-masked assassins. Chi! 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 A total of 13 assassins, among whom 8 were copper-masked assassins and 5 were silver-masked assassins, were killed in a split second. Then, Jian Wushuang swiftly moved again. The cold water drops swept to 5 nearby assassins. 5 sword edges hit 5 killers at the same time, instantly killing them. At this point, they finally realized what was happening. Damn it! Kill him! Kill! There were nearly 100 assassins in the outer courtyard. Though Jian Wushuang had killed 18 in one breath, there were still many assassins coming to kill Jian Wushuang. Among the approaching crowd, the strongest, the 4 gold-masked assassins were at the front. Gold-masked assassins were experts in the exceptional gold core realm. At this moment, the 4 gold-masked assassins closed in on him simultaneously. However, a fierce wind suddenly blew and those falling raindrops swept over the 4 gold-masked assassins. All of their eyes were filled with terror, then they all fell at the same time. The strongest, the 4 gold-masked assassins, were killed by one movement of his sword. How can this be possible? How could 4 gold-masked assassins be killed with a single move? What's with this strength? Out of the assassins who were still alive in the area, a lot of silver-masked and copper-masked assassins looked at this in shock. Gold-masked assassins? Jian Wushuang would not spare a glance at them. He could already kill a gold-masked assassin in one move 2 years ago. Now his strength was much better than 2 years ago, so he could obviously kill several gold-masked assassins with a single move now. Next, it is your turn. Jian Wushuang looked around at those silver-masked and copper-masked assassins. The killing intent in his eyes was more intense. Everyone belonging to Blood Feather Tower has to die. Sure. Jian Wushuang moved again. The terrifying water drops in the heavy rain could not be seen clearly, and they easily swept over those assassins. A massacre. A total massacre. Even the 4 strongest gold-masked assassins were killed. The remaining silver-masked and copper-masked assassins had no chance to even defend. While Jian Wushuang was massacring everyone in the outer courtyard, dozens of figures gathered inside a room of the inner courtyard. There were 8 gold-masked assassins and 2 purple-masked assassins. Besides them, there was a purple-robed person who didn't wear a mask, but his status was no lower than the purple-masked assassins. He was an Ing. This time our target is her. An Ing opened a scroll. Detailed information on an expert was written on it. One of the upper elders in Tianyuan sword sect, Guqinghan. An Ying's voice was cold as he continued, the mole we put in Tianyuan sword sect has a high position now, and it is possible for him to take charge of the Tianyuan sword sect as the new head of the Tianyuan sword sect. However, Guqinghan has always gone against him these years. So, she has to die. Hearing that, the gold-masked assassins and 2 purple-masked assassins didn't change their expressions. Upper elders of Tianyuan sword sect, though they were supreme experts of the Yinyang void realm, it was not difficult to kill them silently. There are many experts in the Tianyuan sword sect, several of them have even reached the Yinyang void realm. It's impossible to kill her in the Tianyuan sword sect, so we have to wait until she comes out of the Tianyuan sword sect. An Ing and the 2 purple-masked assassins were discussing how to secretly kill Guqinghan. However, suddenly, they sensed a strong wave of spiritual power and heard many death howls from the outer courtyard. Chapter 136, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 2. Chapter 136, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 2. What happened? An Ing asked and frowned. There are enemies attacking, a purple-masked assassin yelled coldly. The door immediately opened, then an Ing and others came out of the room. As soon as they walked out, they saw a ghostly figure in the outer courtyard that was several hundred meters away. The figure swept through in succession, with a strong sword light and many streaks of sword light flashing. Each streak of sword light had the blood of assassins from Blood Feather Tower on it. There, hurry up! A purple-masked assassin violently shouted, and then immediately rushed into the outer courtyard. It was only a few hundred meters, so it only took an instant to arrive at their speed. But in just that instant, the assassins in the outer courtyard had already suffered a massacre. When An Ing and others arrived in the outer courtyard, Jian Wushuang was piercing the chest of the last silver-masked assassin with his long sword. Plop! With the falling down of the silver-masked assassin's corpse, only Jian Wushuang remained standing in the outer courtyard. An Ing and the others were stunned. Even though they were all top assassins, they were stunned when they came into the outer courtyard and saw this scene. There were a lot of corpses spread out on the ground in the outer courtyard and in the corridor under the eaves. All these corpses were strewn about, and the whole courtyard was buried in corpses, while the blood rushing from their wounds had already dyed the whole courtyard scarlet. It was still raining heavily, and the vacant land in the central courtyard was waterlogged. But at the moment, that water was so scarlet. At first sight, it was like a demonic scene from hell. Wearing a bamboo hat and a straw rain cape, Jian Wushuang stood in the very center of this demonic hell with the triple kill sword in his hands. He was like a powerful demon fighting his way out of hell. No matter whether it was An Ing, those 2 purple-masked assassins, or the 8 gold-masked assassins, all of them were shocked by this scene. What shocked them was not that Jian Wushuang killed all these people, but the time that Jian Wushuang spent killing them. As soon as Jian Wushuang started this slaughter, they became aware of it in the inner courtyard and immediately rushed here. From the inner courtyard to the outer courtyard was only a few hundred meters. They arrived in the turn of a hand, at most a dozen breaths of time in total. In such a short time, Jian Wushuang killed all the assassins in the courtyard, nearly 100 assassins. How could he be so fast? How strong is he? The 2 purple-masked assassins in the courtyard asked themselves in their heart whether they could kill all the assassins in the outer court in such a short time if they tried their best. The answer was no, it's impossible. But Jian Wushuang did it. The most important thing was, judging from the spiritual power radiating from Jian Wushuang, he was only in the profound gold core realm. A person in the profound gold core realm can kill nearly 100 blood feather tower assassins in such a short time. An Ing watched Jian Wushuang with a strong killing intent on his face, and coldly shouted, "Who are you?" The 2 purple-masked assassins and 8 gold-masked assassins also intensely stared at Jian Wushuang. 2 years ago, in front of a lot of people, I once said. The face of Jian Wushuang was still hidden under the bamboo hat, but his indifferent voice spread throughout the area. The day I return is the day all you guys die. You should have heard that. An Ing was stunned, and there was a hint of terror in his eyes. At this moment, Jian Wushuang also lifted his head slightly, and exposed his handsome face. Chapter 137, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 3. Chapter 137, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 3. Choo! An incomparably terrifying sword light directly burst out. Even the 2 purple-masked assassins could not help but shudder secretly when they sensed the frightening power embedded in the sword light. Both of them were still retreating swiftly to escape the previous 3 sword moves from Jian Wushuang. The one who was targeted by the bursting sword light only had time to brandish his purple soft sword, trying to deflect the sword light. Boom! The terrifying sword light released an incredibly shocking power, knocking the purple soft sword away, and then using the undiminished remnant power of the sword light to strike the purple-masked assassin's body. In an instant, a big round bloody hole, with a diameter of more than 1 centimeter, appeared on the body of the purple-masked assassin. The bloody hole pierced his body, shredding and smashing any organs and flesh it passed by. The purple-masked assassin's eyes widened while blood poured wildly from his mouth. Then his body fell down backwards. The first purple-masked assassin was dead. What? The other living purple-masked assassin was shocked by the scene. His heart suddenly thumped as Jian Wushuang's cold eyes looked over towards him. Run! The imposing purple-masked assassin, a peak expert in the Yinyang Void realm, did not hesitate to fly up into the sky. Not until he reached the void over 10 meters above Jian Wushuang did he dare to stop and glance at him in terror. Terrifying. His sword skill is too terrifying. Fiery Wind Sword Essence. Yes, he has already combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire into the Fiery Wind sword essence. His comprehension of the sword essence is much better than mine. 2-on-1, Old Nine and I were still defeated by him, and Old Nine was even killed in one attack. His strength is far beyond the common initial Een Void realm. He might even be able to rival experts in the profound Een Void realm. The purple-masked assassin murmured. Void walking? Jian Wushuang frowned when the purple-masked assassin fled into the air. Warriors in the Enyang Void realm were able to void walk, so Jian Wushuang could not stop him if the former wanted to escape. Though the purple-masked assassin was out of his reach, Aning and the other gold-masked assassins, who were not able to void walk, were still on the ground. He fought with 2 purple-masked assassins and even killed one of them. How could that be possible? Aning felt it was unbelievable, as he looked at the dead body of that purple-masked assassin. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang looked over at him. Aning was frightened out of his senses. Quick, kill him, go and kill him. Aning roared. The 8 gold-masked assassins beside him froze for a moment, then immediately rushed out. Assassins of Blood Feather Tower were all well trained. Even if the order from their superiors was to get themselves killed, they would not hesitate to obey. While the gold-masked assassins rushed forward, Aning fled in another direction, yelling at the purple-masked assassin in the air, "Come! Come and save me!" That purple-masked assassin began to approach once he heard him. You want to escape? Jian Wushuang shot a glance at Aning and snorted. All the other assassins in the Clearwater stronghold didn't have to die. He wouldn't mind even if the 2 purple-masked assassins stayed alive. But he would not let Aning escape, never. Get out of my way! Jian Wushuang cried out, followed by another flash of sword light. An utterly light and graceful sword move danced through the heavy rain and then swept across the throats of the 8 gold-masked assassins. The 8 gold-masked assassins were all killed in an instant. Do you think you can escape? After killing the 8 gold-masked assassins with just one move from the formless sword art, Jian Wushuang dashed out immediately, and appeared behind Aning in the blink of an eye. How could he be so fast? Aning turned pale with fright. Realizing that the purple-masked assassin couldn't escape with him into the air before Jian Wushuang could catch him, his face became grim and madness arose in his eyes. Bastard! Go to hell! Aning turned around with a rush, hurling a coldly glaring knife right toward the space between his eyebrows. The knife was incredibly fast and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang in a flash. Ridiculous! Jian Wushuang sneered as he slid past the knife with a ghost-like movement, then swung his sword across Aning's wrist. Aning's entire hand was chopped off. Ah! Aning howled with great pain, while Jian Wushuang had already appeared in front of him. A brutal power was condensed in Jian Wushuang's palm, which was then clenched into a fist and launched into Aning's abdomen. Puff! Aning spewed a large mouthful of blood, and his complexion instantly became pale again. My gold core, my gold core. Although Aning was also an expert in the exceptional gold core realm, he did not even have a chance of resisting when Jian Wushuang destroyed his gold core. The gold core was the source of spiritual power for warriors. Since it was destroyed, the decades of earnest cultivation that Aning endured instantly crumbled to dust. You'll be dead soon. Why care about your gold core? Jian Wushuang laughed scornfully. He reached out with his hand and gripped Anying's neck, raising Anying's body up into the air as if gripping a chicken, and then slammed it down fiercely onto the ground. Bang! Even with the buffer of the gathered water from the rain, the blow cracked the ground below. Aning once again madly squirted blood from the severe damage to his organs. Then, he passed out from the intense pain. The next moment Jian Wushuang lifted Anying's body, looking up towards the purple-masked assassin in the air. An unparalleled hint of fear emerged in the purple-masked assassin's eyes, so he did not dare to come down and fight with Jian Wushuang, not even for Aning. Purple-masked assassins? Just a so-so. Ignoring the purple-masked assassin, Jian Wushuang grinned and quickly dragged Aning out of the courtyard. Soon he disappeared from the purple-masked assassin's sight. The purple-masked assassin stood alone in the air, gazing at the sea of blood down on the ground. As the only survivor in the stronghold, he could not help being speechless. This massacre brought a great loss to Blood Feather Tower. More than 100 copper-masked and silver-masked assassins in the entire Clearwater stronghold were slain to the last man. The 12 gold-masked assassins all died in the carnage, too. Of course, these losses were nothing compared to the death of that purple-masked assassin and Aning being caught. I had no idea that Jian Wushuang, who fell into the abyss 2 years ago, would still be alive and have improved his strength so much in such a short period. The purple-masked assassin clasped his hands. Since he is alive, Blood Feather Tower will be in some real trouble. Chapter 138, The Leech. Chapter 138, The Leech. Jian Wushuang dragged Aning into a cave. Bang! Jian Wushuang tossed him and his body hit the ground. Aning immediately came out of the coma because of the pain. As soon as he woke up, he burst out, howling because of the pain. Jian Wushuang walked to Aning with a light golden elixir in one of his hands. This elixir is worth 200 points in the secret pavilion of Dragon Palace, now it's a favor to you. Waving his hand, Jian Wushuang made Aning swallow it. It was a panacea in secret pavilion of Dragon Palace. After taking it, Aning would not die any time soon. Tell me, where are my father and aunt? Jian Wushuang asked. His father and his aunt, whom he cared about most, were taken away by Blood Feather Tower. Aning remained alive till now because Jian Wushuang needed his help to find his father and aunt. Your father? I don't know, Aning answered and shook his head. Squinting his eyes, Jian Wushuang was not surprised. His father was the first one who awakened his sword soul. Blood Feather Tower had sent lots of experts and slaughtered the whole Ji clan in order to catch him. In the eyes of Blood Feather Tower, his father was much more important than his aunt. Therefore, his father should be locked up in an even more secretive place. As for your aunt, you mean Ji Wuyue, right? I caught her 3 years ago and I do know where she is now. But, do you think I will tell you? Said Aning, looking at Jian Wushuang with a sneer. I know you will not easily tell me, so I prepared something for you. Having said that, Jian Wushuang turned his hand over, revealing a light yellow worm egg. It seemed that it was going to hatch a baby worm. Aning, I heard that you are good with poison. Since the heart-biting poison in my aunt's body was from you, you must know what this is in my hand, right? Jian Wushuang said. Seeing that light yellow worm egg in Jian Wushuang's hand, Aning changed his facial expression immediately and shouted, a leech. You are right, Jian Wushuang replied with a slight smile. Then, he quickly shoved it in Ying's mouth without giving him a chance to speak. Aning struggled violently, but it didn't work at all since his dantian had been disabled. After swallowing the light yellow worm egg, his face turned red and he desperately tried to vomit. However, the leech egg had already melted in his body. The leech lives in the blood. Once it enters your body, it will immediately hatch, then begin sucking your blood. The first leech will turn into 2, then 2 turn to 4, and in the end it will hatch thousands of leeches. They will swallow your blood bite by bite, then your flesh. Your body will be totally swallowed in several days. That's the real body devouring by 10,000 worms. Speaking of the pain, my aunt who was struck by your heart-biting poison should be suffering more than you. Hearing Jian Wushuang's cold voice, Ying's face was suddenly pale. Both the leech and heart-biting poison were ways of torturing people. The leech was more horrible with regards to the pain, while heart-biting poison was crueler. After all, heart-biting poison worked in the body step by step. It might last for years or even decades. It not only tortured the physical body but also the mind. While the leech worked faster and more fiercely, only lasting 1 to 2 days for death to occur. Before Jian Wushuang decided to attack the stronghold, he asked the woman who was in charge of Golden Dragon's subsidiary palace to prepare him a leech egg. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Damn it! Ying's face was still red and distorted. Apparently, the leech in his body had started swallowing his flesh and blood. The pain was strong and it didn't take long for the leech to reproduce. 1 turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4. The pain he was suffering was increased by several times. Ah! A sharp pain he had never suffered before spread through his body, so painful that Aning could not stand it. So he raised his left hand and tried to hit his head. However, Jian Wushuang stood beside him staring at him. When he saw Aning trying to hit his head with his left hand, a sword light flashed and Ying's left hand was instantly cut off, falling to the ground. After which, Jian Wushuang slapped him in the face. It was a slap effectively controlled by spiritual power. Immediately Aning spit out a mouthful of blood containing pieces of his teeth. Jian Wushuang had slapped him and destroyed all his teeth in case he tried to commit suicide by biting off his own tongue. Don't even dream about dying with me here these 2 days. Enjoy it. Jian Wushuang smiled and sat down leisurely beside him, then he brought out a bottle of wine. He was just drinking. However, Aning lay sprawled out on the ground with his hands and feet waving, and his face was extremely distorted. Kill me. Please, kill me. Aning desperately implored him. But he said it unclearly because all of his teeth were destroyed. Watching him coldly, Jian Wushuang did offer him any mercy. He knew clearly that the pain caused by the leech was nothing compared with the pain caused by the heart-biting poison in his aunt's body over the years. What's more, it was he who poisoned his aunt with heart-biting poison. Nearly half an hour later, the leech in Ying's body had turned into 8. The pain had already increased by 8 times. Ah! Aning roared crazily while suffering such great pain. He almost lost his mind. He couldn't bear the extreme suffering anymore. I'll tell you where Ji Weiyue is. Aning growled and said. Then Jian Wushuang, who was drinking, turned over and looked at him. I will tell you. After that, please kill me. Aning roared. He didn't want to live anymore. He just wanted to die. However, he was not even able to kill himself since his hands were cut off and his teeth were knocked out. Tell me. Jian Wushuang didn't want to waste time. Ji Weiyue, she was locked up by the Situ family, Aning said unclearly. Situ family? Which one? Jian Wushuang asked and frowned. The Situ family in Bahui Commandery, Situ Qingyue is their master. Ji Weiyue is locked up in the mansion of the Situ family, Aning growled. Situ Qingyue. Jian Wushuang's facial expression suddenly changed. Situ Qingyue, he knew him and he also met him before. In the next instant, Situ Qingyue had been explosively knocked out, spouting blood as he flew backward. Bang! Situ Qingyue heavily fell upon a chair in the hall, which immediately exploded. Master! Those warriors of the Situ family were all scared and angry, but no one dared to move. Even Situ Qingyue, in the Gold Core realm, had been severely hurt without clearly seeing Jian Wushuang. If they stood out, it was just like seeking their doom. I will ask you again. Where is my aunt? If you still won't answer me, today I'll slaughter the whole Situ family, leaving no one alive. Jian Wushuang's voice was icy cold, with great killing intent. Situ Qingyue's throat tightened as he spoke. I'll take you there. Really pretending, Jian Wushuang said while coldly smiled. Then Situ Qingyue struggled to stand up, and led Jian Wushuang towards a secret chamber in the mansion. Quang! The door of Situ family's secret underground chamber immediately opened. It was a very dark chamber. As soon as Jian Wushuang entered, he saw a woman in a cage in the front of the chamber. Her hair was in a mess covering half of her face, while the other half was full of malignant tumors and scars, looking extremely ugly. The offensive odor from her body could be smelt even in the distance. Auntie! Jian Wushuang recognized this woman as soon as he saw her, and then he immediately rushed towards her. Just as Jian Wushuang started to move, next to him, a sparkle appeared in Situ Qingyue's eyes. Although the latter looked terribly pale and was covering his chest with one hand. "Attack!" Situ Qingyue shouted loudly. One black iron pillar after another suddenly rose from the ground on which Jian Wushuang just rushed past, forming a giant cage. In an instant, the whole secret chamber was covered, and Jian Wushuang was trapped within the cage. Ugh! Seeing this scene, Situ Qingyue finally laughed out loudly. Jian Wushuang stopped his steps and could not help changing his face as he turned around and found the cage in front of him. "Jian Wushuang, you must have never thought about it." Situ Qingyue stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold smile. "When building this secret chamber, I had predicted that such a scene would happen one day, so I set up this trap from the beginning. The surrounding walls of this secret chamber are made of black steel with a thickness of over 3 meters. No one could break through them. As for the iron pillars in front of you, they are forged with raven gold. Except supreme experts in the Yinyang Void Realm, no one can." Before he finished his words, Situ Qingyue suddenly became stunned. As Jian Wushuang abruptly waved his hand, a sharp and brilliant sword light suddenly burst out. Although the iron pillars were made by raven gold and incomparably hard, they were instantly broken into pieces as soon as the sword light touched them. Whoosh! A figure unexpectedly appeared beside Situ Qingyue. "You!" Situ Qingyue opened his eyes widely, staring at Jian Wushuang in front of him. "I planned to let you live a little longer, but now, it's unnecessary." Jian Wushuang's icy voice rang in his ears, and then a sword light burst out. Shwa! Situ Qingyue's head was completely separated from his body. Chapter 140 Death. Chapter 140 Death. Situ Qingyue's head flew high into the air with his eyes wide in disbelief. He didn't know. Although Jian Wushuang was only in the profound gold core realm, his real strength was much more terrifying. In Clearwater's stronghold, he fought with 2 purple-masked assassins at the same time and killed one directly. Although he was not in the Yinyang Void Realm, he was more powerful than a normal warrior in that realm. How could the cage trap him? "Master! Master!" Seeing Situ Qingyue's head flying in the air, all the Situ family warriors in the area were greatly frightened and no one dared to step forward. After turning around, Jian Wushuang walked into the cage. He chopped the pillars of the cage with his sword and appeared before Ji Wuyue. "Auntie," Jian Wushuang's voice trembled. Ji Wuyue was just absent-mindedly sitting there. Until she heard Jian Wushuang calling her, after which her eyes shone lightly. "You are, Wushuang?" Ji Wuyue asked with a deep and husky voice. "Yes, it's me," Jian Wushuang nodded vigorously and said, "Auntie, I'm here to take you away." After saying that, Jian Wushuang directly held her in his arms and walked out. At the exit of the secret chamber, there were so many warriors from the Situ family blocking the door. "Anyone who stands in my way will die." Jian Wushuang shouted in a cold voice and glanced around with killing intent. All the warriors in the Situ family were so frightened that they all moved back out of the way, making way for them. Jian Wushuang took Ji Wuyue out from the Situ family, and then they sat on the griffin waiting outside and flew away. Half a day later, Jian Wushuang was back in the cave again, along with Ji Wuyue. Aning was still lying on the ground in the cave. His crazy yell had died down because of his hoarse throat. However, his contorted face and crazy eyes showed that he was suffering a lot. Jian Wushuang carefully let Ji Wuyue recline on the cave's wall, and then he walked toward Aning. "Give me the antidote." Jian Wushuang shouted coldly with a commanding tone. Aning forcefully raised his head, glancing at Jian Wushuang and Ji Wuyue, then he sneered and said, "Jian Wushuang, you want to save her now?" "Haha, absurd, ridiculous." The heart-biting poison had spread through her whole body. "She can't survive much longer." "I don't have any antidote, even if I did and gave it to you, it will not work anymore. You have belittled the heart-biting poison too much." "Huh." Aning laughed wantonly. "Kia." Jian Wushuang slapped him on his face and said, "Bastard." Wushuang. Ji Wuyue's deep and husky voice sounded. "Auntie." Jian Wushuang hurriedly walked toward Ji Wuyue and squatted down in front of her. "I clearly understand my body. It's true that I only have a few days to live and that no one can save me," Ji Wuyue said with a smile. "I have no regrets now that I have had a chance to see you and the old bastard again before I die. Wushuang, give me a knife." Jian Wushuang was in a trance. "I want to kill him myself." Ji Wuyue's voice trembled, looking at Aning with resentful and cruel eyes. "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded. Then he took a dagger out from his interspatial ring and gave it to Ji Wuyue. Ji Wuyue strugglingly came to Aning and turned his body over so that he was facing up. Ji Wuyue. How about the heart-biting poison?" Aning looked at Ji Wuyue with a grim smile. Ji Wuyue didn't answer him. But she slowly stabbed the dagger into his thigh rather than the vital organs. "Ha, come on, kill me, torture me. What was the torture I suffered in comparison with what you suffered these years? Ji Wuyue, you are so miserable. You are an extraordinary beauty who was second only to your sister, Ji Wuming, in Ji clan. So many experts once succumbed to your charm. But now, look at you, a ghostly image. Miserable, such a miserable person." Aning growled crazily. Ji Wuyue didn't say anything, just continuing to stab the dagger into his body again and again. One by one, she had stabbed him for more than 50 times in succession. At this moment, Anying's voice was faint and nearly breathless. Then Ji Wuyue raised the dagger in her hand and brutally stabbed it into his heart at his last breath. Aning died at once. After killing Aning with her own hands, Ji Wuyue's whole body was trembling, but there was also delight showing in her eyes. Jian Wushuang coldly watched what she did. But he felt ashamed and guilty when facing his auntie, Ji Wuyue. "Wushuang." Ji Wuyue suddenly turned. "Auntie." Jian Wushuang raised his head. "Shua." Her blood spilled on Jian Wushuang's face and he was completely stunned. Seeing Ji Wuyue stabbing the dagger into her own heart. Although Ji Wuyue spat blood out, she wore a smile on her face. After suffering so many years, it's time to get rid of it. Wushuang. Don't forget the blood debt of the Ji clan. But now you are not strong enough and you'd better not fight against Blood Feather Tower face to face. What's more, I saw your father. Though it was 3 years ago, he is alive. Once she finished saying that, Ji Wuyue gave Jian Wushuang one last look and then she slowly fell down. Stunned, Jian Wushuang stood there, rooted on the ground. He recovered himself a long time later and looked at his dead auntie. "Ah!" A roar with unprecedented killing intent flew to the 9th heaven at this moment. Rumble. Even the void thundered as if it was echoing his angry roar. After a good while, everything finally quieted down. The thunder stopped, and the heavy rain which lasted a whole day and night stopped as well. On an unknown hill, Jian Wushuang knelt in front of a nameless gravestone. Holding his hands closely and looking at the gravestone, he kowtowed 3 times heavily. "Auntie, rest in peace. I swear I will collect the blood debt for our Ji clan." Jian Wushuang said in a calm tone, but he was much more persistent and determined than ever before. Blood Feather Tower, everything was caused by Blood Feather Tower. Jian Wushuang's face was ice cold. But auntie is right. I am not strong enough, I'm far from being strong enough. Though I can bring some loss to Blood Feather Tower, I cannot turn it upside down. There is still a long way to go before I can uproot them. I have to try my best to improve my strength. Jian Wushuang had a strong desire for strength. Staying in Sword Tomb for 2 years, he had improved a lot and could even kill normal purple-masked assassins. However, his strength was far from what was needed to uproot Blood Feather Tower. It's better to go back to Dragon Palace first. Jian Wushuang set off right away. Chapter 141, Ouyang Haoyue. Chapter 141, Ouyang Haoyue. In a dim study, a grey-clothed elder was so angry that 2 will-o'-the-wisps seemed to be burning in his eyes. He didn't die. How could he still be alive after jumping into the abyss? The grey-clothed elder growled. The 2 purple-masked assassins standing in front of the grey-clothed elder were trembling with fear and dared not say anything. Not only did he not die but became much stronger. The grey-clothed elder looked at the information in his hands. The information read, Jian Wushuang went to the Clearwater stronghold in Tianyan province alone, killing all 98 copper-masked and silver-masked assassins as well as 12 golden-masked assassins. Even 1 purple-masked assassin was killed there. After the revenge 2 years ago, there were not many purple-masked assassins remaining in Blood Feather Tower. And now they had lost 1 more. It also read, the 2 purple-masked assassins in Clearwater stronghold joined hands to fight with Jian Wushuang. But seconds later, 1 was directly killed and the other one was scared, escaping into the air and not daring to fight anymore. He fought against 2 enemies at a time and completely suppressed them. He has improved at such a fast pace, way too fast. If we don't stop him, Blood Feather Tower will be destroyed by him sooner or later. He must die. Don't take any chances and don't give him any chances. We have to kill him. The grey-clothed elder growled. Suddenly, there was a light sound heard in the room. You have said that many times, haven't you? The door creaked open. A silver-robed young man, who had long hair and a wicked face, leaned against the door. He was staring at the grey-clothed elder with a strange smile. If anyone else intruded into his study like this, the grey-clothed elder would have killed them the first time, but the demonic youth was different. Not only did the demonic youth intrude into his study, he also sneered at the grey-clothed elder. However, the elder was not angry at all. Why did you come here? The grey-clothed elder asked. Though the young man hadn't reached the Yinyang Void Realm, his status in Blood Feather Tower was extraordinary. Even the elder had to be humble when speaking to this person. I did not want to come here. However, Master ordered me to, so I had to come, the demonic youth said. Tower Master, the grey-clothed elder was stunned. Master said that Jian Wushuang is the target of a Scarlet Kill command, so he has to die. However, you have failed twice in a row and Blood Feather Tower paid a great price because of that. Nothing unexpected is allowed in the 3rd assassination. Therefore, I am here, the demonic youth smiled. The grey-clothed elder's face fell. He knew that Tower Master was questioning his ability because he failed to kill the target twice. What will you do? The grey-clothed elder asked. That's easy. I'll kill him openly, the demonic youth smiled and said. What? The grey-clothed elder didn't understand. Don't forget that a major event is about to happen. As a disciple of Dragon Palace, Jian Wushuang should certainly attend it. Killing him at that time will be undoubtedly logical. Dragon Palace won't say anything no matter how much it angers them, the demonic youth said. I almost forget about that, said the grey-clothed elder, smiling as well. He was confident in the demonic youth's strength. Jian Wushuang defeated 2 purple-masked assassins simultaneously. However, the demonic youth was much more terrifying. Because he was Shuaiyun. Ranking first on the earthly dragon list, he was recognized as the strongest in the Yinyang Void Realm. 3 years ago, he fiercely fought with Bailey Chen and barbarian King Qing Song, who ranked 2nd and 5th on the earthly dragon list respectively, outside the Imperial Palace. It was crowded and busy in the Imperial Palace, so nobody noticed Jian Wushuang when he flew over the Imperial Palace. That is. Jian Wushuang suddenly noticed a figure in the crowd at the Imperial Palace. He changed his look a little bit, then he made the griffin land in the Imperial Palace. A bunch of warriors were gathered on a wide street of the Imperial Palace center, excitedly watching the fierce fight in front of them. Bang! A deep and low crash noise sounded. The amazing strength gathered into the blast wave and spread out, which made many warriors narrow their eyes. Following that, a strong man flew back in defeat. Ha, Su Lai, is that your full strength? So weak. You want to fight with me for the Cloud Dream Ginkgo? A weak man like you must be kidding, a purple-haired man with a saber in his right hand and a milky ginkgo in his left hand. His budding laughter echoed through the entire street. The man who was just beaten back was Su Lai, a disciple of Dragon Palace. At this moment, his face was red and his breath was short. He stared at the purple-haired man coldly. And a red-robed girl stood beside him. "Brother, are you okay?" the red-robed girl was worried and asked him. "I'm fine," Su Lai shook his head and said, "but I couldn't take back the Cloud Dream Ginkgo." "Doesn't matter." "Forget it," the red-robed girl said. Su Lai bitterly nodded. He was not willing to forget it. Many warriors gathered here and watched this with interest. And Jian Wushuang appeared as well, wearing a bamboo hat. Su Lai, seeing Su Lai, Jian Wushuang smiled. Then he looked at the purple-haired man who was yelling. "That is, Ouyang Haoyue." Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Ouyang Haoyue ranked 21st on the Earthly Dragon list, higher than Xiao Mang, whom he had fought with before. No wonder he defeated Su Lai so easily. The experts on the Earthly Dragon list were at the peak of the primordial gold core realm, but their strength still varied. The closer to the top, the stronger his strength, especially for those ranked in the top 20 and the top 10. Among them, each one was a monstrous expert. Ouyang Haoyue was ranked 21st, but Su Lai was ranked 94th. This was obviously a huge gap. Everyone says that there are lots of exceptional geniuses and disciples with heaven-defying talent in Dragon Palace. But it seems you are nothing more than this. Ouyang Haoyue overlooked Su Lai and sneeringly said. "Are you provoking the whole Dragon Palace?" Su Lai's eyes were dark. "So what?" Ouyang Haoyue didn't care and continued speaking. "Only Bailey Chen and Qing Tsang are ranked in top 10 on the Earthly Dragon list. Compared with the past disciples, you are much weaker. In this year's event, it would be pretty good if Dragon Palace could get 2 out of 15. But you, ranking 94th on the Earthly Dragon list, were not qualified to join it, am I right? Proud as you are just a joke." Ouyang Haoyue sneered. Unwilling to talk to Su Lai, he turned to leave. However, when he turned around, Jian Wushuang stepped out from the crowd and walked towards him. Chapter 142, My name is Jian Wushuang. Chapter 142, My name is Jian Wushuang. Ouyang Haoyue had only taken a few steps when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. "You are Ouyang Haoyue, the 21st warrior at the Earthly Dragon list?" Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. Ouyang Haoyue shot a glance at Jian Wushuang in front of him. "I have wanted to join the Earthly Dragon list for a long time. But unfortunately, I haven't run into any of the experts on the list. How lucky I am to meet you today. Let's fight," Jian Wushuang directly said. Hearing these words, the numerous surrounding warriors burst into an uproar. He is coming for a challenge. Another one who is not afraid of death. There are so many experts on the Earthly Dragon list. Su Lai, who ranks 94th, is also here. Yet, instead of Su Lai, he chooses to challenge Ouyang Haoyue, the 22nd. He is either a real expert or a complete idiot. Many surrounding warriors began talking. After being challenged by Jian Wushuang in front of so many people, Ouyang Haoyue looked a little gloomy. "Where are you from, idiot? Do you know nothing? Get out of my way." The cyan saber in Ouyang Haoyue's hand immediately slashed towards Jian Wushuang with towering force. A slight upturn was seen at the corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth. He immediately reached out with his right hand the moment Ouyang Haoyue swung his saber. A vast amount of earth essence was gathered into Jian Wushuang's palm, taking on a physical form as he immediately grasped the slashing cyan saber. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. The blade of that cyan saber could not even scratch the earthen glow surrounding Jian Wushuang's palm. With the saber gripped in Jian Wushuang's hand, Ouyang Haoyue could not budge it at all. What? My God! What am I seeing? Many of the surrounding warriors were stunned. How powerful was this attack from Ouyang Haoyue, who ranked 21st on the earthly dragon list? Undoubtedly, it could easily kill a warrior in the exceptional gold core realm. Yet, such a powerful saber attack was now completely held in his bare hand. It was possible if Jian Wushuang was wearing some gloves or fist covers, but there was nothing covering his hand. He simply grabbed Ouyang Haoyue's saber. What did that mean? How can this be? Ouyang Haoyue himself was astonished. Although that slash had not used his full power, it was still more than a common warrior in the exceptional gold core realm could handle. However, the man in front of him had easily grasped the blade with his bare hand. You are ranked 21st on the early dragon list, yet your strength is only this much? Still hiding his face under the bamboo hat, Jian Wushuang gave out a sneer. Go to hell. Ouyang Haoyue was enraged at Jian Wushuang's insult. A horrible current of spiritual power arose. A powerful blast of blade essence of raging fire suddenly erupted from the cyan saber, forcing back Jian Wushuang's palm. Immediately after, Ouyang Haoyue reclaimed his saber, immediately attacking again. Swoosh! The blade flash was sharp and explosive, containing a terrible fury that made the numerous warriors in the area instantly turn pale from fear. Ouyang Haoyue had put his full strength into this slash. But the result was... bang! A palm appeared in front of the saber a second time, grasping it once more. The blade essence was instantly broken and the cyan saber was trapped in Jian Wushuang's hand again. Impossible! Ouyang Haoyue was really seized with terror and fury. The first slash was wielded randomly, so it meant nothing although Jiang Wushuang could grasp it with his bare hand. But this time, he had used his full strength. Yet, the result was the same, he grasped it with his bare hand, stopping the saber with his bare hand, twice in a row. What kind of strength is this? Such profound comprehension in earth essence, which was good at defense, was intensely gathered in his palm. It is no surprise that Ouyang Haoyue's attack could not break it. He, the 21st warrior on the earthly dragon list, was just a so-so. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, then moved his palm a little. A vast current of the earth essence erupted and a terrifying force rushed out. At the same time, Ouyang Haoyue's cyan saber was completely bent in Jian Wushuang's hand, and then became an out-and-out twist. Casually throwing aside that cyan saber he had turned into scrap metal, Jian Wushuang grinned and then punched Ouyang Haoyue's chest. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out as Ouyang Haoyue brutally flew backwards like a kite with a broken string, immediately cracking the ground with his heavy landing. The whole street became very silent. Everybody who witnessed the scene was in shock. Jian Wushuang slowly walked towards Ouyang Haoyue, and said in a low voice, Ouyang Haoyue, with such strength, are you qualified to be the 21st on the earthly dragon list? How ridiculous! You are far weaker than Xiao Meng. What Jian Wushuang said was the truth, because he had fought against Xiao Meng. In terms of real strength, Xiao Meng was definitely much stronger than Ouyang Haoyue. But, because the former had kept a low profile and rarely fought against others, his rank remained 22nd for a long time. You? Who on earth are you? Ouyang Haoyue tightly stared at Jian Wushuang. You mentioned Xiao Meng. He is a low-key person who hardly ever fights with others. His most recent fight was 2 years ago and it caused a big commotion. He fought against Swordsman, who died. Before he finished the story, Ouyang Haoyue suddenly widened his eyes and then shouted with fear, you are Swordsman. What? The entire street was shocked. Swordsman? The guy who turned the whole Tianzong dynasty upside down 2 years ago. Swordsman, an exceptional genius that rarely appeared every few decades, who was listed in the Millennium Chronicle compiled by the Gladiator Arena. Everyone was familiar with the name Swordsman. But now, Ouyang Haoyue said that this mysterious man wearing a bamboo hat in front of everyone was the same Swordsman. Swordsman? Su Lai abruptly raised his head, gazing at Jian Wushuang. Everyone on the street looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, who hid his face under the bamboo hat, slightly curled the corners of his mouth at this moment, and then directly threw away the bamboo hat. As he raised his head, a cold but handsome face appeared. Meanwhile, his voice, with a little arrogance, was heard echoing on the entire street. "I'm not Swordsman. My name is Jian Wushuang. With a sword in hand, no one is my match. Remember that." The red-robed girl standing beside Su Lai nodded. Then, following Su Lai, Jian Wushuang walked toward Dragon Palace. At Dragon Palace. The moment Jian Wushuang returned, everyone in Dragon Palace was shocked. What? Who? Who has returned? Palace Master White was stunned by the news. "It's Swordsman. He has returned," replied the purple-robed servant who delivered the news. Swordsman? The expression on Palace Master White's face became complicated. Jian Wushuang was the talent whom she thought most highly of. 2 years ago, when it was said that Jian Wushuang had been forced to jump into the abyss, she was the saddest one. But now, Jian Wushuang had returned. Go! Go! Bring him here quickly. Oh, no! I'll go get him myself. Huh! The exceptional genius of our Dragon Palace has returned. Inside Dragon Palace. Jian Wushuang and Su Lai slowly walked forward, side by side, surrounded by the disciples of Dragon Palace. When these disciples saw Jian Wushuang, their expression became very weird. It really is Swordsman. It's him. He didn't die. He jumped into the abyss, didn't he? How can he still be alive? These disciples all felt it inconceivable. After all, many warriors had witnessed Jian Wushuang jumping into the abyss. It was a fact. Jumping into the abyss definitely meant death. Even the Millennium Chronicle, compiled by the Gladiator, said that an exceptional genius had passed away. Alas! How sad! But now, Jian Wushuang had not died and he just appeared in front of everyone, alive. Third brother. Third brother. A shout of awe and exultation was suddenly heard in front. Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked over. He immediately noticed Wang Yuan rushing towards him with Yang Zixuan and Su Rou beside him. Huh! Elder brother Wang Yuan. Jian Wushuang walked towards him with a laugh. Third brother. I missed you so much. Wang Yuan directly gave Jian Wushuang a big hug. Second brother. It's been a long time since we saw each other. Jiang Wushuang looked towards Yang Zixuan, reaching out his fist. Welcome back. A smile appeared on Yang Zixuan's cold face as he reached out to bump fists with Jian Wushuang. Ha, fourth sister. Jian Wushuang then turned towards the shy Su Rou and directly gave her a hug. Su Rou did not resist, but her face turned bright red. 2 years later, the four of them had finally met again. Swordsman. A clear and cold voice was heard. After which, Palace Master White walked towards him, followed by a crowd of temple masters. It really is Swordsman. Little guy, how are you so lucky? We all thought he had died, so we took revenge on the Blood Feather Tower. No one ever expected the boy was still alive. Seeing Jian Wushuang, the temple masters talked casually, smiling. Swordsman, follow me. Palace Master White spoke directly. Jian Wushuang raised his brow and shot a glance at Wang Yuan and the other two. I'll go with Palace Master White first, then join you later. Okay, I'll prepare some good wine for you. Let us four siblings drink heartily and have a good time later, Wang Yuan said and then laughed. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded, then followed Palace Master White and left. Chapter 144, Nanyang Continent. Chapter 144, Nanyang Continent. Within the palace. The temple masters had left, but palace masters Black and White were sitting in front of Jian Wushuang. Boy! What happened? How did you survive the abyss? Asked Palace Master White. It was no wonder why she was so curious. The abyss was still a mystery. No one knew what was there. However, anyone who fell into the abyss, even experts in the Yinyang Void Realm, would die. However, Jian Wushuang returned alive from the abyss. I don't know. When I fainted after I jumped into the abyss. When I woke up, I found myself inside the sword tomb, Jian Wushuang said. A sword tomb? Palace Masters Black and White looked at each other. The sword tomb was rife with sword scars. Jian Wushuang told them most of what happened in the sword tomb, only leaving out the absolute beauty and the robust man in the ancestors' land. He told them he had accidentally entered the sword tomb. After hearing what Jian Wushuang said, both palace masters looked astonished. You spent a full 2 years in that sword tomb. Besides the sword tomb, didn't you explore anywhere else? Palace Master White could not help asking. No, I could feel danger all around, so I did not dare to explore. Somehow, I was able to leave by entering the space rift. Then, I appeared in the dark forest, Jian Wushuang said. Space rift? Wormhole? The two palace masters stared at him with wide eyes. The wormhole was a legendary skill. Of course, it might also be a natural wormhole. It seems that there is a big secret hidden in the abyss, said Palace Master White, sighing in praise. So many experts of the Yinyang Void Realm went to explore but never returned. Yet somehow, this little guy survived. He's quite lucky. Palace Master Black also smiled. They were not very skeptical about what Jian Wushuang said. The abyss was a dangerous place. It was normal for Jian Wushuang to find out nothing given his current strength. Anyway, being able to return alive is already very fortunate, and you returned at a great time, Palace Master White said and laughed. A major event is about to begin. I was currently troubled by this. Now that you are back, that problem is solved. A major event? Jian Wushuang asked. Before, in the Imperial Palace, Ouyang Haoyue had also mentioned it. But he had no idea what this major event was. Palace Master White. What is this major event? Jian Wushuang asked without hesitation. Have you heard about the easternmost hunt? Palace Master White beamed. The easternmost hunt? Jian Wushuang immediately shook his head. He had never heard anything about it. Well, it is a long story, so I'll explain it, Palace Master White smiled and slowly narrated. Jian Wushuang, is the Tianzong dynasty vast? Palace Master White asked. Very vast. Jian Wushuang immediately nodded. In his eyes, the Tianzong dynasty was incredibly vast. You are right, the Tianzong dynasty is very vast. Palace Master White also nodded and continued, it has a total of 16 provinces. There are many counties in these 16 provinces, so it can be said to be very vast. However, how big is the land we are on? The land? Jian Wushuang was stunned for a second and then shook his head. I tell you that this piece of land is called Nanyang Continent and it has endless territory. There are many dynasties on the Nanyang Continent. Tianzong dynasty is just one of the many dynasties on the Nanyang Continent. And just a small empire, Palace Master White said. A small empire? Jian Wushuang was slightly stunned. On the entire Nanyang Continent, the dynasties have been divided into 3 levels according to their territorial strengths. Small empires, middle-sized empires, and large empires. Palace Master White explained. Different level dynasties will have different overall strengths. Our Tianzong dynasty is only a small empire. Among the many dynasties on the Nanyang continent, it can be said that it is an unremarkable dynasty that nobody cares about. Not far away, the territory, where the Tianzong dynasty is located, is in the northwest corner of the Nanyang continent. There are a total of 11 dynasties around us. Of these 11 dynasties, there are 2 large empires, 6 middle-sized empires, and 3 other small empires. The easternmost hunt is held every 20 years. At the beginning of the easternmost hunt, the 12 dynasties in the northwest, including Tianzong dynasty, will send experts to participate. The rules stipulate that those experts can only be warriors in the Gold Core realm. Warriors in the Yinyang Void realm cannot join. Each easternmost hunt will generally attract some old sections. Old sects? Jian Wushuang asked while lifting his brow. In the Nanyang continent, there are a large number of dynasties. The real overlords and rulers of this continent are from those old sections. The dynasties are merely the vassals of these sects. Palace Master White smiled and continued. Some old sects will be taking part in the easternmost hunt, and they will also select some of the best among those who participate in the hunt. They will become core disciples instead of normal disciples. Becoming a core disciple is considered a big success. Even his dynasty will flatter them. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was completely stunned. The core disciples of those old sects have such a status. Even a dynasty has to fawn over them. Boy, there's something you need to understand, Palace Master White said seriously. There is no doubt that Dragon Palace is the holy land for cultivators in the Tianzong dynasty. But it is only true in the Tianzong dynasty. Outside the Tianzong dynasty and in the entire Nanyang continent, Dragon Palace is nothing. And those old sects are not. Jian Wushuang was surprised, but it was understandable. Although the cultivation resources in Dragon Palace were very rich, as his strength increased, Jian Wushuang gradually realized that the resources in Dragon Palace had little use for him. However, ruling the entire Nanyang continent, the old sects would have more amazing resources. So, you can imagine how fortunate it is to enter the old sects and become a core disciple. Naturally, there are countless people who are eager to enter these old sections. For the 12 dynasties in the northwest, the only chance to enter them is the easternmost hunt. Chapter 145, The Selection Battle. Chapter 145, The Selection Battle. Participate in the easternmost hunt is the only way to join the old sections. When does this the easternmost hunt, begin? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, the easternmost hunting, which is held every 10 years, will start in 3 months. But for the small empires, such as the Tianzong dynasty, only 15 Gold Core realm experts can participate, Palace Master White said. Only 15. Jian Wushuang frowned. A dynasty, even if it was a small one, possessed countless geniuses. In the Tianzong dynasty, there are 100 experts on the earthly dragon list. They are all geniuses. The number would be even larger if the hidden experts of the Gold Core realm are included. However, only 15 of them were able to participate in the easternmost hunt. Therefore, each spot was extremely precious. Because there are too few spots, before the easternmost hunt, our Tianzong dynasty will select the 15 strongest experts to participate in it. And this selection is called the quota battle. Palace Master Black said. Though it is just a selection battle inside the Tianzong dynasty, it will still be very cruel. As the holy place for cultivators in Tianzong dynasty, we can elect 10 people to participate in this quota battle. But in the end, how many of them can obtain a spot is unknown. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. Only 15 spots, even if it was in Dragon Palace, which was known for being full of exceptional geniuses, the available number of spots was also limited. Among the disciples of Dragon Palace, Bailey Chen and Qing Song are ranked 2nd and 6th on the earthly dragon list. Both of them have a good chance. However, they can only take 2 spots. In the previous selection battle, Dragon Palace took at least 4 or 5 out of the 15 spots. But this time the disciples of Dragon Palace, compared to the previously, are weaker overall, so our expectations are lower. But we want to get at least 3 spots. In addition to Bailey Chen and Qing Song, we need one more person to secure a spot, Palace Master White said seriously. You want me to participate in the selection battle and get a spot for Dragon Palace? Jian Wushuang looked questioningly at both Palace Master Black and Palace Master White. Yes. Palace Master White nodded. 2 years ago, you defeated Xiao Meng, who ranked 22nd on the Earthly Dragon list. Besides, your talent is well known, and in these 2 years, your strength must have greatly improved. It's very likely that you can obtain a spot. But, it is not just for Dragon Palace. You are also participating in the selection battle for yourself. I know your true identity. Jian Wushuang, the target of a Scarlet Kill command from Blood Feather Tower, which means that they will kill you at all costs. So 2 years ago, despite the revenge from Dragon Palace, the Blood Feather Tower was still determined to kill you. There is no buffer between you and Blood Feather Tower. It won't stop until one of you dies. To be honest, your current strength is still too weak to take on Blood Feather Tower. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. So, what you need the most now, is time, Palace Master White said and smiled. You are talented, so if you are given enough time to grow, there is a huge possibility that you will obliterate Blood Feather Tower in the future. But, Blood Feather Tower won't give you time. They will take every chance to assassinate you. Though I will give you shelter, unless you are hiding in Dragon Palace, it will be difficult to really ensure your safety. If you can, stand out in the easternmost hunt and draw the attention of those old sections. Once you become a core disciple of those old sects, they won't dare touch you. Palace Master Black also nodded and said, the old sects are powerful and capable of destroying Blood Feather Tower with ease. Therefore, if you become a core disciple of an old sect, Blood Feather Tower won't dare to kill you, at least on the surface. And you can take advantage of the shelter from the old sect to improve your strength. Finally, when your strength has increased to a certain level, you can fight back against Blood Feather Tower. I see. Jian Wushuang laughed. He also agreed with the 2 palace masters. Indeed, if he could get a spot and participate in the easternmost hunt, then joined one old sect, he could appear openly in front of Blood Feather Tower. The cultivation resources in the old sects were also better than those in Dragon Palace. Trust me. I will attend the selection battle. Though I am not absolutely sure I can get a spot, I will do my best, Jian Wushuang said. I knew you would agree. Only a fool wouldn't agree, Palace Master White said and laughed. Okay, here's a gift. Palace Master White turned her hand over and gave Jian Wushuang a thick book. This is, Jian Wushuang looked at this book strangely. After opening it, his look immediately changed. Formless Sword Art, the last 3 moves? Yes, that is the last 3 moves of the Formless Sword Art, Palace Master White laughed and said, actually, 2 years ago, when you passed the 11th level of the Dragon Gate, both of us and those temple masters discussed and agreed to give it to you. But we failed to do that because of what happened. Now that you have returned, it's yours. But the last 3 moves of the Formless Sword Art are not available in the secret pavilion? Jian Wushuang felt it was strange. You are really stupid. Do you think that the secret pavilion is simple? Palace Master White said and grinned. Jian Wushuang was confused. There are actually 2 secret pavilions in Dragon Palace, a big one, and a small one. You often go to the big one. Though there are many treasures, it's only suitable for the warriors in the Gold Core realm and the Spiritual Sea realm. However, the small one is only available to palace masters and temple masters of Dragon Palace. Though there are few treasures, they are more precious. Like the last 3 moves of the Formless Sword Art, which were not in the big secret pavilion, only in the small secret pavilion. So, are you surprised? Palace Master White asked while beaming. Yeah. Jian Wushuang laughed. The Formless Sword Art was known as the top sword skill in Tianzong Dynasty. It was incredibly powerful. After the experience in the Ancestors' Land, Jian Wushuang's field of vision had increased. Not to mention, he also had the Selfless Sword technique, which was better than the Formless Sword Art. However, Jian Wushuang still looked forward to studying the last 3 moves of the Formless Sword Art. Chapter 146, Gathering of the Brothers. Chapter 146, Gathering of the Brothers. The formless sword art has 9 sword skills, and each one is stronger than the previous one. What level of power will the last 3 sword skills reach? Jian Wushuang was looking forward to the results. Well, you should prepare for the selection battle being held in 1 month. Of course, before this battle, Dragon Palace will hold its own competition and choose 10 people to participate in the selection battle. All the elders of Dragon Palace will return, so you will have a chance to meet them, said Palace Master White. Elders? Jian Wushuang asked, while smiling slightly. He already knew the elders from Dragon Palace. Although they did not stay in Dragon Palace during ordinary times, all of them were famous in Tianzong Dynasty. 15 of them were on the earthly dragon list. For Jian Wushuang to participate in the easternmost hunt, he had to go through 3 rounds or competition. The first round was the selection within Dragon Palace. After all, Dragon Palace only had 10 recommendations, but there were many old and new disciples that wanted to participate in this hunt, so it was inevitable that Jian Wushuang would take part in this competition. The second round was the selection in Tianzong Dynasty. All the top talents in Tianzong Dynasty would take part in it. The third and final round was the beginning of the real easternmost hunt. In that round, the 12 northwestern dynasties would all compete against each other. Inside the manor. Come on, let's toast third brother's resurrection. Wang Yuan laughed happily and picked up a glass directly. How could you call it a resurrection? I was alive the whole time. Jian Wushuang rolled his eyes, but he still drank the wine in his glass. Third brother, you never knew that after hearing the news of your death 2 years ago, I was in pain for a long time. So, you owe me another glass, Wang Yuan said. Very well. Jian Wushuang smiled and drank with Yang Zishuan and Su Rou by his side. Jian Wushuang was really happy to see these 3 siblings again after 2 years. By the way, you should be careful when dealing with that blood feather tower who chased you, because there is something unusual about them, Wang Yuan said with profound meaning. Something about them is weird. Su Rou nodded her head deeply. Yes, I know. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He never looked down upon Blood Feather Tower. Come on, let's drink. Third brother, you should give a toast to second brother. In these 2 years when you were missing, in order to get revenge for you, second brother targeted Blood Feather Tower and used them to practice his swordsmanship. In those 2 years of slaughter, numerous assassins of Blood Feather Tower died by his hands, Wang Yuan said with a smile. I do need to give a toast to second brother. Come on, second brother. Jian Wushuang immediately gave him a toast. In these 2 years, Wang Yuan's strength did not seem to have grown, but the strength of both Yang Zishuan and Su Rou had greatly improved. Previously, they had reached the profound Gold Core realm. But now, they had stepped into the exceptional Gold Core realm. Especially Yang Zishuan, his cultivation was definitely at the peak of the exceptional Gold Core realm. Yang Zishuan's comprehension towards essence was rather high. When he and Jian Wushuang entered the Dragon Palace, he had directly passed the 8th level of the Dragon Gate. After such a long time, his comprehension must have reached a higher level. Combined with his cultivation, Yang Zishuan's overall strength should be very terrifying. Second brother is sitting in front of me. Although he deliberately restrained his breath, I feel that his strength is greater than Ouyang Haoyue's. Jian Wushuang thought in his heart. I've just heard about it from Palace Master White, Jian Wushuang said with a smile on his face. Su Rou was still as shy as before and said nothing. Third brother, you will participate in this event, won't you? Yang Zishuan asked him. Of course. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, and you? I will definitely participate. I will join both the selection battle in 1 month and the easternmost hunt in 3 months, Yang Zishuan said coldly. Oh, pretty confident. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, and then looked at Su Rou and said, how about you? Su Rou muttered for a while, and then nodded her head and said, I will do my best. All I can do is to wish for you three to succeed in the hunt. It's a pity that my strength is not strong enough, or the four of us could join the easternmost hunt and show our power to the experts of large empires. Just thinking about that makes me excited, Wang Yuan said with emotion. It's still too early to say that. It will be difficult to get one of the 10 recommendations from Dragon Palace, let alone one of the 15 places in the selection battle 1 month later. As far as I know, the elders of Dragon Palace will come back to help win more spots in this hunt. Their strength is extraordinary, and 15 of them are on the earthly dragon list, said Jian Wushuang. Of those elders, only Bailey Chen, who is ranked 2nd, and Qing Song, who is ranked 6th on the earthly dragon list, are worth worrying about. There is nothing to fear from the others, Yang Zishuan said in a cold voice. That's really crazy. Jian Wushuang said and chuckled, but a real smile emerged from his heart. The four siblings gathered together and talked for a long time, not dispersing until the evening. Third brother, I have prepared a gift for you. Can I show it to you? Wang Yuan held Jian Wushuang's shoulders and said with a mysterious smile on his face. Gift? Jian Wushuang wiped his nose and said, of course, let me see the gift. Lead the way. Okay, Wang Yuan answered. Then he led Jian Wushuang to leave the Dragon Palace and go to the Imperial Palace. Wang Yuan and Jian Wushuang came to a seemingly ordinary shop in the Imperial Palace. Under the guidance of an attendant, they entered the cellar and then stepped into a secret chamber. 2 purple-robed guards were standing in front of the secret chamber's door. Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed when he saw these 2 guards. Yinyang Void Realm? Jian Wushuang's eyes were full of astonishment. He could obviously detect that the 2 guards in front of him were experts at the peak of the Yinyang Void Realm. Experts of the Yinyang Void Realm, guarding the door to a secret chamber? What was going on here? Brother Yuan, this is, Jian Wushuang involuntarily asked. Don't ask so much. Later you will know everything. Come with me. Wang Yuan waved his hand, and then the 2 guards immediately opened the door. Wang Yuan and Jian Wushuang walked into the secret chamber, one after the other. This secret chamber was actually a totally enclosed dungeon. There was only a tiny amount of candlelight, so this dungeon was very dark. As soon as Jian Wushuang stepped into the dungeon, he saw a body in the center of the room, tied to a burning iron prop by a black iron chain. The body was covered in scars. Some of them were caused by a knife, while some were worm bites. The scars were terrifying to look at. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.